stand at the podium. It's up to you. Yeah, just turn the mic on.
How's that?
Perfect.
Awesome. Thank you, Mayor, Council. My name is Ben Sargent, and I am a homeowner here in Longmont, in Old Town, and 744 Atwood Street. And this year I'm retiring and getting into my preferred retirement job, which is farming. And it turns out that the average age of the farmer in America is 60. So I'm just a little bit over that. One of the things, so last year we started a food co-op, a farm to family food co-op to organize food between the farms and the families, because we were driving around to 4 or 5 different farms and ranches to get the food that we wanted, and we thought, okay, got to be a better way of doing this. So we organized, got a bunch of families and a bunch of farms, and everybody's happy. So this, but the issue is that there was not enough local food for the demand. It seems like we're at a moment in history when there's a lot of increased demand for local, organic, fresh food, healthy food. And the food that we're getting at natural grocers and Whole Food is mostly coming from Mexico and California. And it's not that healthy because it was picked 4 to 7 days ago, and the nutritional value of fresh produce deteriorates rapidly. And also been bathed in diesel fuel all the way from California or whatever. So in fumes, I mean, you know, riding in boxcars and trucks and whatever. And so we have definitely noticed that we eat all fresh, local Boulder County produce now, and what you buy, you know, even at Whole Foods, which is the best in terms of how it looks, it's just doesn't have the same, I don't know what it is, but we notice the difference. So anyway, we are this year helping, so in order to increase access to food, we are increasing production of food. So we are helping, we've helped 3 farms already start, small farms, small production. I'm personally involved in one of them. We are working with more farms this year than we did last year. But we want to expand the number of farms we're working with. We want to also help new farms start and provide training. Farming is one of those things that everybody should know how to grow food. It's a very basic skill. So we're wanting to train the next generation. So I grew up doing this, then I had a whole career in the tech industry. Now I'm getting back into it, and I'm helping younger people learn how to do this. But one of the things that's distressing about the city of Longmont is how the most incredible farmland seems to be going into development. So that's, I guess, what I'm here to ask is, how can I get involved in the future decisions about how land use is going in this city so that we don't lose any more of this incredible farmland. Just because it hasn't been used in the last 10 years doesn't mean that it's not farmland. It doesn't mean that it should never be farmland again. It is, the soil here is incredible. Right now I'm growing in Lafayette. It's amazing soil that's been recovered over the last 10 years. We're doing further restoration on the soil, and the produce that comes out of it is really amazing. And so there's a lot of land, it just needs to be cared for. And soil restoration is something that a lot of people are studying now. When I was in college, everybody wanted to go into the high-tech industry. Now I've been one of the farmers that we've helping get started this year, just graduated from CU Boulder in Sustainable Food Systems graduate degree. There's a lot of people who are in the younger generation that want to get into farming, and we need to encourage them because if you talk about sustainability, I think there's nothing more sustainable than food production and growing food locally and having those skills passed on to the next generation. Obviously, there's a lot of interesting new skills and new knowledge that's coming in about how to do farming in a better way. But anyway, would love to know
Thank
who
you.
I can talk to.
Well, you may be able to, is there anyone here on council that would like to engage Mr. Sargent on basically his ideas? Councilor Martin.
Thank you, Mayor Peck.
This is Councilor Martin down here.
What I wanted to say is you can't hear me?
Yeah, I'm a little hard of hearing, sorry.
Sorry. I'll try to get closer. Is that better?
Great, I can definitely hear that.
Okay. I want us to suggest Longmont has a nearly complete circle of land that is owned by the city that is devoted to agriculture around the periphery. Most of it is leased back to either another farmer in the area or to the original farmer who just wanted to get his value out of his land. And it's in hay. You know, the agricultural leases are pretty simple. So I suspect that this is an operational matter and that you could talk to the public works people if you came with a well-formed proposal about how those leases could be assigned differently in the future to produce a more active kind of farming, there's plenty of land out there. And, I don't think we need to get to the point where, we need to be protecting vacant lots inside the city in order to
Right.
provide that kind of opportunity.
Agreed, okay.
Sorry, Councilor Yarbrough.
Thank you, Mayor. Mr. Sargent. I would love to embark on that endeavor with you. I apologize for not us having our coffee, but please reach out to me again and let me find out some more information. Thank you, Councilor Martin, for that information as well. And I would love to continue our conversation about that and work with you on that.
Okay, meet you at the farmer's market.
That's right, every Saturday morning.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you all, appreciate it.
So we do have 3 chairs up here, so I'm going to call on the next 3 people, and you can just come up and wait your turn and might go a little faster. The next one is Mary Lynn, Mark Springfield, and Chad Arner. So, hello, Mary. Hi. Go ahead and turn on your microphone. And you have 5 minutes and your name and address, please.
Hi, I'm Mary Lynn, and I live on the historic East Side, also on Atwood Street. That was my hardy and sunburned husband, Ben Sargent. I sit on the city's Sustainability Advisory Board, and in the just about a decade that I spent working in sustainability with various entities, including the Prescott College, where I was promoting the college and its good works, I learned a great deal about approaches to sustainability and approaches to climate that include life, that are not technologically focused, And I would like to encourage the city to move in a direction that I do not see at all, frankly, sitting on the Sustainability Committee, which is towards life-based solutions to our sustainable issues. In particular, I would like to see regenerative agriculture, building soil health, tree planting, and the increasing of vegetation, and the bringing of food production closer to home. All of these things save an enormous amount of energy. They're some of the most sustainable things that we can do, and reduce the need to rush to unproven technological methodologies that are popular, frankly, at the moment, but the more you dig into them, the more it's obvious that they aren't meeting their promise. So trees, local food, regenerative agriculture, building the soil. And I would like to encourage the city to develop a department specifically towards this end. There are many that are focused on beneficial electrification and climate issues, but this is the primary fundamental human issue I feel before us at this time. So I don't really have a question. I just wanted to add that support to what Ben had to say and see if there's anyone here who's ever thought about creating a team that could address these issues within the city.
So I will respond to this, and then I'll call on you, Councilor McCoy. Actually, I think that our incredible sustainability parks person, David Bell, has already talked about soil regeneration, and he might be a really good one to start a conversation with as to how we can do this in the city, and also Lisa Knobloch. Have you talked to Lisa?
Well, yeah, I'm on the Sustainability Advisory Team. The city does not have a focus on beneficial planting of trees for issues of soil health, sustainability, cooling of buildings and so forth. It seems to be a bit ad hoc. I think one of the local sustainability experts in the area tallied up, and the Parks and Rec had planted something like 250 trees in the last year, which, we should be planting something on the order of, a tree every few people, and maintaining them. There's lots of different varieties, especially if we had a focus on permaculture, or at least exploring permaculture. We could be also growing a lot of our food here. We have fruit trees that bear every year right in downtown Longmont. We might not have the neatest yard on the planet, but there's hundreds of pounds of food coming out of it, and just as it used to be. So coming back to more traditional ways of thinking about these things.
Okay.
So I'm not going to take up much more time, and maybe I can meet with the Shakita when Ben meets with her at the farmer's market.
Oh, that's a great idea.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Councilor McCoy
Sure.
would like to
Thank you,
weigh in.
thank you, Mayor Peck. So, Mary, thank you for coming down tonight. When I was on council the first time in 2007 to 2011, Sarah Levinson and I spoke quite often about the idea of having food sustainability, what your husband, before you came and talked about, as well as you kind of hinted at here around the trees and the growing and everything. And we had a group come before us called Grow Your Own Meal, and they were a
Right, they're in Boulder.
yeah, and they were looking for a location here in Longmont to do their hydroponics with their fish farm sort of concept and everything at the time. But I don't know how. I've looked it up once or twice to see what it's doing in Boulder and how it's progressing. But I don't know if something like that is also something that is of interest to you. And
Well, what I'd really like to see is the use of open spaces, including public open spaces, as demonstrations of permaculture food production, and to simply be building the soil, because that's important for us, so that we have a culture of being aware that when you have regenerative agriculture, which means that you're incorporating animals in rotational grazing, and that's the way to build soil and that way to capture carbon, as I know that's a big concern for many here. For example, there's now I believe I saw that some goats are being used in the city. Great start. In lieu of spraying with, I could list all of the horrible chemicals and what they do. I'll save you that. I think that if we had more of a focus on bringing that into the city in an obvious way, making it they're giving incentives to developers to put in community gardens. Water catchment is huge. That's a whole subject I could get into. It's not as people think it's illegal or that water rights don't allow it. Actually, if it's captured and released slowly over time, we could capture, each of us, enough water in Longmont to meet our personal needs and to be growing our garden and using our gray water to keep up the landscaping. It's a whole change of mentality that's less top-down. It's more about incenting community activities and developing personal awareness that I prefer more than a, let's, bring in 5G sensors to put on every plant and tree in the city.
Okay, well,
So-
thank you so much
You're
for
welcome.
bringing that to us.
And
Thank you.
we'll talk with Shakita and see what we can get started, and with Mr. Bell. Thank you for your time.
You're welcome. Mark Springfield.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name's Mark Springfield. I live at 2009 Calico Court here in Longmont.
Could you get closer to your microphone, Mark?
How's that?
Oh, that's great.
It's good? In order to suppress my tendency to ramble, I'll read some of these.
Now all you need to do is move that microphone in front of your mouth. Perfect.
How's this work?
There you go.
Okay. Tonight, I'm here to speak about the proposed library funding initiative that hopefully will find a place on this year's November ballot. As has been mentioned on a number of occasions, our library system has experienced a decade or more of persistent underfunding. It has left our library with a compendium of deficiencies. These were well documented by Sigger Consulting in their Library Feasibility Study Phase 2 from last year. My takeaway from observing the previous discussions on the subject here by Council is as follows. Yes, Council thinks the library has been underfunded. Council has stated that it wants to rectify some of the noted shortcomings via a November 2023 ballot initiative, whose language in part references such needs as a branch library and funding at the preferred level as defined by the feasibility study. City staff has been asked to draft appropriate language towards achieving these goals for consideration by Council. I strongly support these recent undertakings. These are very good first step actions to which I propose the following additional items for inclusion in any ballot language or future thinking on the subject. The purpose of the funding approval requested in November's initiative must be directed specifically and solely on a go-forward basis to the library. Existing library funding via the general fund and as provided elsewhere to the city for library purposes must be protected prospectively in addition to any assistance received in November. Future councils, because of the exigencies of the day, may seek to redirect support away from the stable and durable underpinnings being contemplated here. Libraries represent a community's future seed corn and ought to be protected. While needs such as storefront libraries, apart from the addition of a branch library, were advanced by the feasibility study, capital costs for such efforts were not. Yet unknown technical advances of an industry-wide nature are another example. Council and city staff should be sensitive to the fact that recommended items from the feasibility study may need future attention beyond November's ballot approval as part of the normal budgetary support for the library. Our ultimate goal should be to provide the wherewithal for a critical community institution to not only survive, but thrive. Thanks for your attention.
Thank you, Mark.
Appreciate your interest.
Thank you. Any comments on council? Seeing none, we'll go directly to Mr. Chad.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Everybody able to hear me okay?
Yes.
All right, got it in the right spot. At 1117 Left Hand Drive, sorry. I have been a resident of Longmont since 1997. I have run the gamut of living rich and living poor in this county and have gotten to see a large breadth of life in this area. For the last 3 years, I have run a locally owned and operated security agency, I happened to have been at work when I found out about the open forum, so I apologize for the uniform. But one of the big things that I've observed in the last 3 years since I've been in Longmont has been the interactions between people like me in the security field and the lack of oversight, the lack of utilization, and misunderstanding of our place, if you will. Right now, as it stands, by chance I lost my father to COVID last year, and he ran a signal operation in St. Petersburg, Florida, which is now mine to operate as well. Florida is Jurassic Park. It is 50 years behind the rest of the country, most than everywhere else, except for my field here. It's heavily regulated in Florida. We are licensed. We have to have a certain number of training hours per year. Colorado has none. I can just spend $25, form an LLC, I've got a security company, and have at it. That scares the heck out of me. In the 3 years since I've been operating for Colorado, I've observed incidences during the 9 News incident, which was a security officer that opened fire. We had at the bank in Aurora, a security officer killed a 20-year-old girl. We had at the Grand Central Station, security officers beat a man to brain damage. All of this has happened in the last 12 months. And all of it I purport to being completely unregulated. None of you really know me from Adam, and so I ask for you, and this just for everyone's safety and not to scare anybody, this is only I use as an example. Since none of you know me, how much would any of you feel comfortable with me walking around in your yard tonight with a gun? Exactly. So why would we trust security agencies to do the same without any sort of oversight, without any sort of regulation? There are only, I think, off the top of my head, I believe there are 6 or 8 city ordinances I have to follow. And it's literally, if the police ask me to do something, please do it. Make sure security is at least 2 inches tall on your car. That's pretty much it. And so we've created this spectrum of service or lack thereof of these security agents that we get called Paul Blart on a daily basis, right? You're the useless, frumpy, incompetent mall cop, right? But then you have the inverse of that, where it's these paramilitary, I call them the academy dropouts, the guys that really wanted to be cops and didn't make it. So now they're just doing security so someone can pay them to be a jerk to people. And neither of those are proper. We have a niche to fill. We have, since BLM, since defund, since the loss of limited immunity for our police, we have not been able to retain and recruit officers to replenish those that we have lost in the last 2 years. So now I've gone from being the guy that's asked to lock up pools at night to I now happen to serve some of our commercial centers here, and I'm dealing with transients and drugs and weapons every night. And let me be so bold to say that I don't mind that at all. But I'm not the police. I don't want to be the police. None of my staff want to be police. But that doesn't mean we can't work hand in hand and cooperate with police and be a facilitator of those services. We're an extra set of eyes, an extra set of ears, and an extra patrol vehicle, and extra manpower in the streets, where we're down, in some areas of where I service, we're down 50% of our police power. That means there's huge holes in what we're able to cover. And because this has been unregulated, most properties either don't have any services or are grossly underpaying. We have a property here in Longmont that had a security budget for their apartment complex that was below minimum wage. It was $200 a month for 6 buildings. And so you've got 1,000 people living in one place. And you'll see it all. If any of you guys like, oh, I'm sorry. If any of you guys like to watch reality TV, you'll hear this a lot. This is a civil matter, ma'am. Take it up with the court. We can't do anything. We're law enforcement. I'm civil enforcement.
So it looks like Counselor
Is my
McCoy.
time up?
It is, but,
I didn't have a timer. I apologize.
no, that's all right.
If I may, just one last thing. If it'd be okay, I would really like to give each of you my card, because I could talk about this ad nauseum to
let's-
reach out. I'll give it to her,
Yeah.
if that's fine.
Counselor McCoy would like to respond to you.
Okay.
so.
Well, I haven't. Thank you, Mayor Peck. Chad, thank you. I didn't catch your last name.
Arner, A-R-N-E-R.
All right, thank you. And having been a banker before I was a teacher, I know how important security is, because we use that, to open up our banks, to close our banks at night, and things like that throughout our community. But it's interesting to me that there isn't as much regulation as what you're talking about, and what I think we should do is reach out to CML and see where, as a group of different municipalities, where we should stand on this, whether this is because you bring up an excellent point. We don't have our police officers meet our tellers and bankers at the door in the morning around our community. We meet security agents, and we don't meet our police in the evenings when we're leaving. We meet our security agents, and they escort us out the building. And so we need to make sure that there's regulation there. And so that seems to me that if you're saying kind of whatever the people are thinking to themselves out loud, I think that we should probably, have some sort of regulation. If you're saying that places that, as you put it, were in Florida were Jurassic Park, then we don't need to be further back than that.
Right. If I may answer that, actually, so this was brought forth to Colorado as a state for regulation of security, once in 2012 and once in 2021. And it was deemed that it was just not a necessary oversight. That being said, there are two municipalities, actually two whole cities now, that do require it. One is Denver. You can get a Denver Guard card, which is I think it's a 30-something hour class you have to do. And Pueblo, of all places, is the other. But like I said, there's a lot more that unfortunately I can't cover in 5 minutes. I have had the honor of meeting Susie and who was it? You, Marcia? I apologize. I think you and I met at the
Coffee with council.
Yeah, coffee with council. Yeah. So I've had smatterings of interactions, but I haven't been able to nail down a good time to sit and talk, because there's obviously a lot of time.
Yeah,
that
we
is
have
taken up.
we have a pretty full council
I know. I
tonight, so
apologize.
I'm
I don't
going
mean to keep it up.
but
I'll leave this for you, Michelle. If you could give them just to reach out to me, maybe make it a little easier to get in contact with each other.
So Chad, Counselor Martin does want to make a statement.
Okay.
Actually, I don't want to make a statement. I want to ask a couple of questions. You sort of touched on both of them. I do think that a regulatory framework belongs at the state level, and I would really like to see that come around again. We are right at the very beginning of the season when there is some ability to influence what the General Assembly does next session. And so I would really love to see a discussion in the month of June, and please just email me and get on my calendar.
Okay.
The other one is, I think most of the regulation should not be local, but perhaps putting an operational protocol together with the police would be a fabulous idea, and I think we should start by running your ideas past the council, and then maybe we can bring them to the public safety
I would
organization.
love to do that. Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
And I do currently work with Longmont Police.
Great.
Through Sarah Ernie, the crime-free housing program as well. So we're already partially integrated in that method as well.
Thank you, Chad.
Thank you, guys. Thank you very much.
Linda Bindorf, Carl Bindorf, and Kim Zimmer. If the three of you could come up. So Linda is up first. There it is.
Now it's on. Good evening, council members. I would like to, I am Linda Bendorf, and I'm at 619 Brookside Drive in Longmont. I am here to talk in support of the November ballot funding initiative for the library. And I really appreciate what Mike, is your name Mark? Said earlier about the library, but I would like to talk about support from a different angle and ask everyone, I hope I'm not preaching to the choir. I feel like I could be preaching to the choir, but sometimes it's like wearing your favorite pendant every day, and then there are times when you don't recognize the value or you overlook the importance of it, how you treasure it. And so think about deeply about the role of the libraries and what they give. And I guess I'm going to go out of order, and instead of ending with a personal story, I'm going to start with it. But libraries have always nurtured my love of words, the power of language, and as a child, I just had total freedom. Child of a single parent, and the library was not a de facto babysitter for me, but I loved going to the library. I lived in Evanston, Illinois. I could take the bus. Evanston is a lot like Longmont in many ways. I could take the bus whenever I wanted from an early age, and our library was not the friendly, happening place like it is here. That was many, many years ago. It was large, quiet, no programs, no events, but I was drawn to it. There was something. Somehow I knew that the books held stories and magic and dreams, and that there was something about being in that place and being nurtured by that place that would open doors. Our kids, actually, growing up in Iowa City, had a full-on library experience. It was so much like our library here. Programs, experiences, events. As a result, our son is a librarian, and our daughter has a job that has everything to do with the power of words and the power of communication and strategic communication. In the 21st century, libraries are encouraged to be the center of community life, going beyond traditional services to be community builders and places where people get involved. Our Longmont Library goes well beyond bricks and mortar. They're meeting the needs of a very unique community. Our community is creative, educated, civic-minded, entrepreneurial. Patrons expect more, and we're grateful when libraries like ours can deliver. I mean, the programs we have, the services, events, literacy in so many forms, chess tournaments, the Library of Things, where residents can check out tools and games and technology. There's so much more, but there's so much that it is an environment with the resources to spark a child's lifelong passion, career, vocation. It's also uniquely a community center that cuts across all ages. Towns and cities can have senior centers, teen centers, schools, but they're designed to provide services and programs for specific ages. Libraries are really one of the few common places that serve the population from cradle to grave. I think that intergenerational aspect is of supreme importance. There's a book I found when I was looking for a lead here, and the title was Expect More, Demanding Better Libraries for Today's World by R. David Lanks. And in this book is a noteworthy statement. Bad libraries build collections, good libraries build services, great libraries build collections, services, and communities. Libraries aren't just about the books, they're about programs, service, and connecting people. When you adequately fund the library, you are funding a child's future and therefore ensuring a better future for Longmont. We have a great library that is stretched to its limits. Show Longmont you support literacy in all its forms. Thank you.
Thank you, Linda. Carl?
Thank you. I'm Carl Bendorf. I also live at 619 Brookside Drive, and I'm also here in support of any future public library projects. Linda and I moved here to Longmont 8 years ago, and we really like it here. And I bet a lot of people in this room will agree this is a great town and a great place to live. But one of the things that really has stood out to us during our time here is how well managed Longmont is. We often say we really feel our city resources, we see them at work, whether it's the obvious things like parks and open spaces, the trails. We love going to, we love going to our great recycling center and so on. And we've really enjoyed all that. But it's interesting, when we first came here, we didn't have housing yet, so we stayed in a local hotel for 6 weeks. And even during that time, one of the first things we did when we came to Longmont was go get our library card. Because we've always felt we've lived in a variety of places, but having the local library card is often something that really feels to us like it helps to root us to where we are. But we feel we're now done moving, and Longmont is where we'd like to stay, and apparently a lot of other folks feel that same way as our population continues to grow, something you're, I'm sure, so well aware of. This number is already out of date, but as of July 2021, we've crossed the 100,000 in population mark, and according to the U.S. Census data, Longmont is one of the fastest growing cities in Colorado and in the country. Our population has increased 15.2% since the 2010 census. But what does that have to do with the library? Well, I've read recently that our current single-site facility was designed to serve a population of 68,000. That means with our current population, our library should be 60% larger than it currently is in terms of capacity and programs and services. And with our rate of growth, that shortfall's only going to grow, and fast. I've also read that Longmont is the largest library system in Colorado, which has only a single site. So if branches are under consideration, that might be a good thing to be looking at. We all know how vitally important public libraries are to the social and economic health of every city. And so I feel it's critical we support the library going forward. And I encourage you to keep that under consideration and make certain that our library grows along with the rest of everything else going on here in Longmont. We don't know what the exact plans are for enhancing the library, and I'm sure that's in flux and will change. But I can tell you that when the time comes, Linda and I will be supporting those projects. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councilor Yarbrough would like to make a comment or a question.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you for speaking, Linda and Carl. Linda, when you were speaking about Evanston, and I'm from Chicago, and so thinking about, first of all, I want to ask, have you ever considered being on the library board?
We are friends of the library, but no, I have not thought about that. So there are other ways I'm using my partial retirement time.
Okay,
So,
okay.
I'm a memoir coach.
Okay. Well, I had to ask. We're always looking for board members, so. Second thing, what made me think about, and I won't be long, the library, what you were saying in Evanston, how do we get that drive again for young people? Because there were no programs. You made me remember that there were no programs when I was young, and we'll hop on the train, the L, we used to call it, and go from library to library because there was a desire to go to the library. And now, look how wonderful our library is with all of these programs and everything. So I would love to one day sit down and talk with you and kind of get your perspectives about where do we go to, how do we get that drive from young people to want to go to the library? And we are doing it, and of course there's so much more we need to do, we know that. But just thinking how we would just show up and we had card catalogs. I mean, I don't know how many, that just date myself, but we had card catalogs and you had the little pencils and you had to write all that out.
And today they have chess tournaments and Lego
Yes.
tournaments, and my understanding is it's overflowing with kids and their families that show up for these things.
Yes. So I would love to talk with you more about that. And hopefully we have several boards. It doesn't have to be the library board, just FYI. Anyway, thank you so much.
Good point. Yeah, recruiting. Kim Zimmer.
Hi, thank you. I just kind of want to talk a little bit about the electrification of Longmont. So I wanted to bring up a little bit about digital, and I'm Kim from Longmont. So once things go digital, there's an on and off switch where citizens have no control.
Can I just interrupt for a minute?
Yes.
Did you give your address? Did I miss
Yes,
that?
I said yes, Kim in Longmont. I was kind of
Okay.
going over it. Yes. So, but so once there is, when everything goes digital, there's an on and off switch, and there's citizens have no control. So, looking into the electrification of Longmont, I know the city council is now looking at electrifying the Longmont to have an electric airport, I guess is how you'd say it, maybe even to be an example for the country. So once everything's electric, it becomes digital, and who will have the power to switch everything on and off? And do we want everything in our lives to be digital? So why does Longmont need to have the capacity with smart meters and smart everything to turn the power off to individual homes? If there's an emergency, as far as I know, maybe doesn't work anymore, but you can currently turn off the neighborhood power at the substation. So the smart meter contains a two-way radio, and there's no rational reason for there to be a radio receiver on the smart meter other than to shut down or ration one individual's house's electricity. So we also need CO2, carbon dioxide. The atmosphere is only 0.04% carbon dioxide. That's only 0.04%, which is less than 0.5%. So I have personally not seen any evidence that proves that this level is unsafe. The concern comes in if CO2 is lowered too much. At 0.02% levels, the lack of CO2 becomes detrimental to plant life and in turn humans, and I think it's something we really need to think about. In the body, CO2 increases oxygen uptake and use by cells via what's called the Bohr effect. That's spelled B-O-H-R if you want to look it up. So it does this by further enhancing the body's metabolic rate. So we need CO2 for respiration and when we are pursuing health and healing in particular. So there's a recent warning from the North American Electric Reliability Corporation, who provides reliability assessments of the electrical grid to all 50 states and the U.S. Department of Energy. They warn that this summer, 2023, 2/3 of the Northern American power grid is in an elevated risk of experiencing summer outages during peak energy use. Quote, administration's hasty transition from oil and gas to wind and solar is sapping energy reserves and driving electricity prices up. The transition to renewables is taking place before the grid can adjust and expand its transmission capabilities. Fossil fuels generate power on demand, while renewable energy relies on the availability of sun and wind at any given moment of the day. And now this is from the National Association of Regulatory Utility Commissioners Executive Director Greg White. Quote, the pace in which we're closing the fossil fuel plants is exceeding the pace that we are bringing new plants online. If you're paying attention to what's going on in the industry has been saying the transition would be challenging, end quote. The article goes on to say that the decarbonization of the West is not only driving up electricity prices for millions of people, but it's also putting the power grid at risk of temporary blackouts for millions more across North America. And now I want to just read a little thing here from Longmont for Safe Tech, which is a sister organization for Coloradans for Safe Tech. It's from somebody in Carlsbad, California. Her name is Karen Rich. She's the founder of Stop 5G. To whom it may concern, I support the passing of a resolution by the City of Longmont to halt the smart meter rollout until it can be proven this technology is safe. There's mounting scientific and medical evidence indicating that exposure to emissions from smart meters and other smart infrastructure is very unsafe to humans and wildlife. Please note the current FCC health and safety guidelines related to smart technologies and smart infrastructure are 27 years old. These guidelines are outdated and not even relevant to the microwave radiation, Wi-Fi emissions, which we are being exposed to now from smart technology and smart infrastructure. And if there is ever a time in history to execute the precautionary principle, that time is now. And the precautionary principles is often used by policymakers in situations where there's a possibility of harm from making certain decisions, such as taking a particular course of action. And conclusive evidence is not yet available. This principle has become an underlying rationale for large and increasing number of international treaties and declarations in the fields of sustainable development, environmental protection, health, trade, and food safety. Sincerely, Karen Rich, researcher, Alchemy Health USA, founder, Stop 5G, Carlsbad, California. So as a resident of Longmont, I would ask this council to declare a moratorium on smart meters until Longmont can prove that their codes are up to date, that they are safe from fires, and do not cause illness in humans or contribute to species extinction. Thank you.
Whoa, you did a good job.
And thank you for listening, everybody.
You're welcome. Counselor Martin would like to address this.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, I'm not going to address the scientific distortions in this, but I would like to encourage everyone else to look it up for themselves.
I would too.
So see CO2 levels in the atmosphere, for example, are rising rapidly. They're not dropping to the point where plant life or human respiration is going to be distressed. But I do want to add that the reason for the two-way, one of the reasons for the two-way radios in the smart meters is to report status conditions at the edge of the grid to specifically prevent power outages due to demand fluctuation during heat events. So, I can't imagine why anyone would say that they couldn't figure out a reason why the radio shouldn't be two-way. That's all I have to say. I'm not gonna,
Thank you.
Thank
argue
you.
it.
And yes,
Okay.
I agree. Everybody should look it up, and I appreciate your time. Thank you.
You're welcome. The next three are Elsie Wilkins, Doe Kelly, and Greg Jensen. Thank you. Great. So we'll start with Elsie. Elsie, would you mind turning on your microphone? And pull it closer to your... Perfect.
I'm Elsie Wilkins, and I reside in Middle Fork Road, Boulder, Colorado.
We need to pull that closer. I'm sorry, Elsie. Pull the microphone closer rather than scooting up. People in the back can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
All right, I got thumbs up.
So to the Longmont City Council from Longmont for Safe Technology, Coloradans for Safe Technology, from individual residents and citizens advocating for safe technology, with all due respect to the board members and Mayor Peck. We are aware that the city of Longmont has a plan called Envision Longmont. Many of our own group are also visionaries, being artists, healers, writers, and metaphysicians, among many other life paths. In looking toward a more beautiful future and in connection with these other visionaries who shared in our ideal, we have created a visionary statement of our own that we wish to share with you now. In advance of the proposal, I am here to introduce, and it goes like this. Our vision of a new earth. We are at peace in this magnificent world of clean air, blue skies and white clouds, sparkling and healthy oceans, and stunning natural environments filled with abundant life and animal life, where healthy people establish communities based in love and service to each other, where being fully human is a desired state, where everyone is honest, the leaders are truthful, selfless, and motivated by service to the greater good. In this new earth, we are enriched by the care we take to maintain our soil, plants, wildlife, water, and air free of chemical pollutants, contaminants, and toxic EMF. We have come and gone from an age of deterioration and disintegration into one of healthy living and thriving. In this new earth, technology is finally being put to an appropriate use in maintaining health and life for all beings. Now for the proposal we wish to introduce, which several of our group will also be reading to you. We, the undersigned residents of Longmont, Boulder County, Colorado, and beyond, committed to safe, ethical, and legal use of technology, are submitting to you a proposed, quotes, resolution for a smart meter moratorium in Longmont, Colorado. We believe this resolution makes, among many others, in case for code violations in the proposed and existing use of the electric meters that the city of Longmont has chosen for its AMI, Advanced Metering Infrastructure Program. We request that you carefully review this proposed resolution that we will be sending you also by email. We feel that it is imperative that the Longmont City Council adopt this course of action, a halt to its smart meter rollout as a necessary preventive measure against any legal action taken to halt the AMI program. Very sincerely yours, Longmont for Safe Technology, and Coloradans for Safe Technology, and we also have a list of several people that are supporting us, and then some of them are speaking tonight. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Elsie. Councilor Martin, I see that you want to address this, but it sounds like this whole group is probably going to be saying the same thing. So can we listen to them first, because the comments are all going to be the same, I think. But, so that's just an ask.
I have one quick question.
Yes.
Is the lawsuit you mentioned coming from one of the organizations you listed in particular?
I am under the impression that it might be more than one organization.
And the answer to the question that I asked is?
It is what I just said. It might be coming from more than one organization.
More than one organization, including the two that you named in your speech.
Probably, and
Thank you.
Doe Kelly will have a more clear response to that question. Thank you, Marcy.
Thank you, Elsie. Doe Kelly?
Can I use the standing up
Of
microphone?
course, of course.
I'd rather stand. Okay, so it's on red. Do I just press the red?
I think so. Try it and see. Yep. And don't forget to bend that microphone down to you. Thank you.
You betcha. Okay. Okay, so my name is Doe Kelly, as you probably all know, and I live on Barberry Drive in Longmont. And I'm going to read the first part of a resolution for a smart meter moratorium in Longmont, Colorado. And it's got a lot of whereases and a few therefores. Okay. So, whereas the city of Longmont has a responsibility to ensure the health and safety of its residents and to provide reliable and efficient utility services, and whereas there are no long-term safety studies on the effects of exposure to smart meter radiation on human health, and whereas there are thousands of peer-reviewed studies linking electromagnetic radiation emitted by wireless devices, including smart meters, with adverse biological health effects, including cognitive impairment, headaches, unexplained fatigue, sleep disturbances, including inability to wake up and/or inability to go to sleep and stay asleep, cardiac arrhythmia, including but not limited to tachycardia and atrial fibrillation, vertigo, tinnitus, ADD, and ADHD-like symptoms, mood swings, including but not limited to anxiety, depression, and unexplained outbursts of anger and immunological abnormalities. And whereas on August 13, 2021, the second highest court in the land, the D.C. Circuit Court of Appeals, rendered a decision in favor of the two nonprofits that sued the FCC for failing to update their radio frequency radiation regulatory limits since 1996, in spite of 5 generations of advancement in wireless technology and millions of radiation-emitting devices. The case, Environmental Health Trust et al. Versus the Federal Communications Commission, challenged the FCC, thus calling into question whether any radiation-emitting device is safe for human exposure. Whereas the court ruled that the FCC's failure to provide a reasoned explanation for its determination that its 1996 radio frequency emission guidelines adequately protect the public against the harmful effects of exposure to radiation from 5G and wireless-based technologies unrelated to cancer, renders the agency's decision capricious, arbitrary, and not evidence-based, in violation of the Administrative Procedures Act, or APA. The court judgment remanded the decision to the commission. Whereas, with respect to cancer, the court acknowledged that the FCC had considered the National Toxicology Program study. The court further acknowledged the two nonprofits and the FCC differed on their interpretation of the study results. Because the FCC need only have shown they had, quote, considered cancer, the court did not include cancer in the remand. The judge's decision did not rule cancer out as a potential threat. Whereas the August 13, 2021 decision in favor of the two nonprofits stated, under this highly deferential standard of review, we find the Commission's order arbitrary and capricious in its failure to respond to recorded evidence that exposure to RF radiation at levels below the Commission's current limits may cause negative health effects unrelated to cancer, end quote. Whereas the court further stated, quote, that failure undermines the Commission's conclusions regarding the adequacy of its testing procedures, particularly as they relate to children, and its conclusions regarding the implications of long-term exposure to RF radiation, exposure to RF pulsation or modulation, and the implications of technological developments that have occurred since 1996, all of which depend on the premise that exposure to RF radiation at levels below its current limits causes no negative health effects. Accordingly, we find those conclusions arbitrary and capricious as well. Finally, we find the Commission's order arbitrary and capricious in its complete failure to respond to comments concerning environmental harm caused by RF radiation, end quote. Whereas at the present time, FCC has not yet updated its standards in keeping with the court remand, and wireless devices such as smart meters are therefore operating under outdated conclusions with respect to RF standards described by the second highest court in the land as arbitrary and capricious. Now that, okay, that's the end.
Thank you, Dale.
May I say one more thing? This is someone who contributed to this document would have read it here tonight, but that person is electrosensitive, and we had inquired, could they turn the Wi-Fi down? But apparently, we can't do that in the infrastructure in this building for people who are electrosensitive. So I,
Thank you.
yeah, okay, thank you.
All right, let's go to,
I'm going to give this to Yen over here.
to Greg Jensen.
Mayor Peck, City Council members, Greg Jensen, Grace Peak Drive. Whereas smart meters may be susceptible to hacking and cyber attacks, potentially compromising privacy and security of Longmont residents' data of the private energy use data. Whereas the Landis & Gear smart meters with Zigbee chips already partially deployed in Longmont in a test area are particularly vulnerable to hacking, which could allow highly personal data that these meters collect to be susceptible to theft by hackers, which could compromise the utility databases and additionally put customers' personal information and behavior patterns at risk. And whereas there is credible evidence that smart meters may not accurately measure energy uses, inaccurate fees and overbilling could lead to financial harm and hardships for residents of Longmont. Whereas the smart meter is a complex and vulnerable electrical appliance that is being installed directly to the service drop outside of the normal safety protections of a residential home or a commercial building's main circuit breakers, which is a violation of the Longmont building codes. Whereas the City of Longmont Sustainability Advisory Board has received complaints and additional information in public comments from citizens and experts regarding the installation and use of smart meters, including the testimony of a master electrician who documented information alleging that the installation and use of the Landis smart meters in Longmont are in violation of certain established codes and standards, such as the National Electric Code, OSHA standards, and the Longmont Municipal Code. Whereas Section 14.32.200.j of the Longmont Municipal Code, one applicable code, clearly states, all services, equipment, and installations must meet all applicable codes and safety standards, including, but not limited to, the National Electrical Code and a number of other agencies that regulate our electrical installations. Whereas under the NEC code, which is the National Electrical Code, electrical devices, including smart meters, must be labeled with the underwriter laboratories. We all know the UL symbol on our devices. That label must indicate they have been tested and comply with safety standards. The absence of the UL label on a smart meter violates the label definition. Whereas Section 14.32.90.a of the Longmont Municipal Code ensures that all electricity customers in the city receive uniform and electrical and equitable consideration, while subsection E on liability stipulates that the city can be held liable for injury to persons or damage to property when such damage or injury results from or is occasioned by the negligence or wrongful acts of the city's agents or employees. Whereas there is evidence that the Landis Gear Gridstream RF90E7 C2 F3 model G5 integrated focus SE AX RE-SD smart meter, the one that's been implemented, which is being installed citywide by the city, does not have a UL label. Thus, is in violation of Section 14.32.200.j of the City of Longmont's Municipal Code, which therefore poses health and safety risks to the Longmont public unnecessarily. Whereas the Landis G Gridstream RF system has not been certified by Underwriters Laboratory in accordance with the National Electric Code standards, as required by section 1432.200.j of the City of Longmont's Municipal Code. Whereas the UL Standard 2735, which is a certification standard for smart meters and other advanced metering infrastructure, does not address all of the potential hazards associated with smart meters and relies heavily on self-certification by the manufacturers. We know what trouble that's gotten us into in the past. Therefore, I support the passing of a resolution by the City of Longmont to halt smart meter rollout until it can be shown that this technology is safe for all of the citizens in Longmont. Thank you.
Thank you very much. No clapping, please. Thank you. Roxy Olson, Kim Edmondson, and Diane Christ are next. Roxy, hello.
Good evening,
Good evening.
Mayor Peck, council members. I'm a taxpayer and citizen of Longmont living at 1678 Judson Drive in Longmont, homeowner. I'm going to continue in reading the resolution, and I support the resolution asking you guys to place a moratorium until it can be proven that there is no harm from smart meters. Whereas there have been reports of fires and explosions associated with smart meter installations across the country, including incidents involving meters manufactured by Landis & Gyr and Census, both of which are certified to UL Standard 2735. And whereas smart meters are known to cause arcing, which is a NEC code violation, and whereas it is known that smart meters are ungrounded, they cannot withstand certain voltage surges, power surges, and lightning strikes, and can potentially cause fires, endangering the safety and the property of residents. And whereas smart meters are often installed in close proximity to gas meters, which could create a dangerous situation in the event of a gas leak or explosion. And whereas smart meters require an uninterrupted power supply to function properly, and power outages could result not only in a loss of data, but potentially create safety hazards when the power returns. And whereas the December 30th, 2021 Marshall Fire was the most destructive and catastrophic inferno in Colorado history, demonstrating how climate changes have made our state profoundly vulnerable to the ravages of wildfires. And whereas the 2016 testimony of Senior Property Claims Examiner Norman Lamb before the New Mexico Public Regulation Commission in response to the question said, would UL certification ensure that a meter is safe, was the question. It evoked the following expert response by Mr. Lamb, quote, most smart meters have not been certified by any independent certification body, such as Underwriters Laboratory, UL, or Canadian Standards Association, CSA. Instead, smart meters are routinely certified by industry groups such as ANSI, which is the American National Standards Association, or IEEE, which is the Institute of Electrical and Electronics Engineers. All of the models of meters that have burned, and many have been certified by these industry groups. UL has a new certification standard that is said to have been developed to ensure the safety of smart meters, UL Standard 2735. But even this certification is not sufficient. The very meters that have received this certification, Census and Landis & Gyr, have caused fires. So again, as a homeowner taxpayer and citizen of Longmont, I urge you to consider a moratorium on the use of smart meters until it can be proven that they are safe. Thank you.
Thank you, Roxy. Kim Edmondson.
Hello, I'm Kim Edmondson on Bittersweet Lane here in Longmont. I speak on behalf of Longmont for Safe Technology and fully support a moratorium on smart meters. And continuing on with what Roxy just read, whereas a Public Records Act request was submitted to the City of Longmont by a Longmont resident who requested an independent report stating Landis Gear have resolved their AMI fire risk vulnerabilities. The City of Longmont responded that no such report existed. And whereas a Public Record Act request was submitted to the City of Longmont by a Longmont resident who asked for a report supporting the contention that the $14 million investment in Landis Gear smart meters would allow the City of Longmont to achieve its energy sustainability goals by 2030. The City of Longmont responded that no such report existed. The city did, however, provide several links, and one was to a website which offered a sustainability report from an experiment in Cardiff in the UK. The report failed to demonstrate the smart meters provided any energy savings. The report suggested a vague promise for the future. Smart meters will be getting smarter. Whereas the City of Longmont must at all times stay in compliance with all established codes and standards such as the National Electrical Code, NEC, Occupational Safety and Health Administration, OSHA standards, and Longmont Municipal Code. And a failure to do so places the city at risk of being held liable for injury to persons or damage to property. Now, therefore, be it resolved that due to many considerable and unresolved problems of legality, liability, standards compliance, health and fire risk to the public, demonstrating the risk far outweigh the perceived benefits as evidenced above, Longmont for Safe Technology et al. Demand that the Landis Gear AMI meter rollout and any existing use of smart and digital AMI meters be halted forthwith, and an indefinite moratorium be implemented on the AMI rollout until such time as 1, all potential RF radiation risks to human health and the environment are conclusively proven to cause no harm. 2, Longmont obtains and makes readily available to the public reports from independent experts certifying that this technology no longer poses fire risks. 3, the FCC complies with its court-ordered mandate to redo its 27-year-old RF guidelines by protecting against the adverse biological effects of non-thermal radiation to human beings, wildlife, and the environment. 4, all AMI equipment in use by the City of Longmont is in full compliance with NEC and OSHA codes and standards. Respectfully submitted this 30th day of May 2023 by Longmont for Safe Technology, Coloradoans for Safe Technology, and other organizations and individuals aware of the dangers and risk involved with these meters, some of whose words you will hear from other speakers, taken from submitted emails in support of Longmont moratorium on smart meters.
Thank you, Kim. Diane Christ.
Thank you, council members, for hosting this open forum. And now for something completely different. I think all of you know me. My name is Diane Christ. I live on Mount Sneffels Street. And I've come to talk to you about a few concerns in my neighborhood. The first issue I want to bring to your attention is that my house and a few others have become unwilling posting areas for our neighborhood. Kathy, my assistant, is going to show you all the signs I collected last summer that were affixed either by tape, driven into the ground by stake, or left standing in my yard. And they're colorful, and there's about 27 of them. Rarely does anyone come back to remove their signs, so the removal of signs is a burden to my family and other families like mine that live at junctures where it's advantageous to leave a sign. If we don't take them down, they litter like confetti across the neighborhood. The signs create a blind spot that makes it difficult for motorists to see oncoming and turning traffic. My neighbor's truck was hit so hard by a passing motorist, it was pushed past the sidewalk into his yard. As Kathy is showing, you will see multiple signs with the same addresses. Many homes in this neighborhood rely on extra money from garage sales to pay for their summer utility bills and to subsidize their moving expenses. So it would be wrong to deny them the opportunity to advertise. But I have two asks of the council today, and the first one is this. I ask for approval for construction of a sign pole holding two flat metal surfaces, maybe with a roller bar or some clips, where people can post their signs. And that these signs should be placed on public land, perhaps on the north side of 21st Avenue, near the utility substation, or near the Rough and Ready Park facing traffic, which would service the whole neighborhood. I believe this would be an inexpensive solution that would contribute to Vision Zero safety and reduce litter in our neighborhood. Now, the second thing I want to discuss concerning my neighborhood, which is in Ward 1, is the several blocks of homes that are zoned as duplexes. And by this I mean houses that are now currently being used as single-family dwellings, not the actual duplexes that were built as duplexes from the beginning. Okay. For the most part, these have been single-family homes for the past 30 years, but in the interest of providing affordable housing, many of my neighbors have rented half of their spaces to those in need of a home. This is an older neighborhood. It's built in the 1980s. So creating demising walls and updates to make this duplexing comfortable has required extra investment on the part of homeowners. Despite only enjoying half of their property, I've become aware that some duplexing homeowners have received a property valuation gain of $100,000 for their home for the year. The tax associated with this type of gain will keep many of the homeowners from making duplex improvements and continuing to share their property. Many are charging well below market rates for their arrangement, and the demographic data for the area shows 48% of the population is living in poverty, and I believe some of those are people that are renting shared housing. My second ask of the council is that you do everything possible to reduce property tax within the city, including but not limited to putting on hold any property valuation gains for the next 2 years, offering property tax credits to seniors above the $200,000 value limit that's current, offering property tax rebates to those who are contributing affordable housing to others, and any other ideas you might have. The council is invested in keeping and creating affordable housing, and I believe the council must now act to curb and reduce property tax burden to keep these properties available for those who need more housing. Thank you so much for your time. And I just want to recognize Mayor Peck for the effort she's made in our neighborhood to get VIA to people who need regular transportation there. Thank you.
You're welcome. Diane, I would like to ask, are you, as far as the sign poles go, are you in a HOA?
We are not.
Okay.
And there are trails and lots of city-owned property near our housing area.
The reason I asked is that we have the Neighborhood Group Leaders Association, that even if you're not in an HOA, it would be easier. For some reason, it seems like more people will go to that who are in an HOA. But they have grant dollars to give to neighborhoods. You have to submit a proposal for what you want it for, and I don't know how much the grant would be for different projects, but I suggest you get in touch with Carmen. Carmen Ramirez. The person who runs NGLA manages that is Wayne Tomac, but the division is under Carmen. So see if they can help you out in getting some dollars for that, looking for a place for you. I think it's a great idea, actually.
Okay, thanks.
You're welcome. Next on our list is Mike Waldhoff, J.D. Gleitz, and Jeff Linroth.
Thank you, Council. Thank you, Mayor. My name is Mike Waldhoff. I live at 1236 Aspen Street in Longmont. I'm here to support a moratorium on installing smart meters in Longmont until the following questions can be answered by truly independent researchers. 1, is this really in the interest of Longmont becoming more sustainable? 2, how much radiated and conducted RF emission do they produce? 3, what is a safe, if any, amount of RF radiation? 4, what are the alternatives to wireless-based meters? 5, can Longmont leverage its fiber network to create even more cost savings and reduce the amount of electronic pollution? 6, for those who do not want to implement smart home strategies, is there an option for one-way home-to-utility communication only? 7, what are the true cost savings, if any, both in terms of direct-to-consumer and reduction in carbon footprint, which would be part of the sustainable issue? 8, what are the costs, the true costs? 9, how safe are they from hacking? And 10, how safe are they from malfunction? Thank you.
Thank you. JD?
Good evening, J.D. Glites, 1632 Sherman Way. I'm here to speak because trust at all levels of government is alarmingly low. I'm here to speak because trust at all levels of government is alarmingly low. I'm hoping at least at our Longmont level we can do our part to help address this and improve residents' confidence. First, I support your vote to require physical address for contributions to candidates for City Council election. We all know money influences politics, and that includes at our local level. The residents have a right to know where the contributions are coming from and should not have to do research to find out who has the contributor's P.O. box. If the real concern is making sure the unhoused can contribute to City Council elections, then some language could be added to require the candidate to confirm the contribution came from an unhoused individual with no address. We absolutely need to know who is contributing money in our elections. Second, I would like to voice my disappointment of the new rules about limiting public comments at planning and zoning and city council meetings where the decision is a quasi-judicial matter. No doubt there has been a court case behind the legal counsel that has allowed or guided these changes. We all know that with development, the developer and their advocate groups spend many hours with city staff and members of council building their case. Using their own PowerPoint and staff's help, they usually guide the presentation at the quasi-judicial hearing. It seems it is already a foregone conclusion by that time anyway. I'm not saying that the time spent with developers is not needed, but if we really wanted the public to have input, we would not limit it to a few minutes nearing the final decision. Sometimes the courts guide us toward less transparency and trust. I fail to see how citizens expressing their concern somehow disadvantages the developer. Thank you.
Thank you, JD. Does anyone know it to Councillor Waters? Whoops. Sorry, that took a minute.
That's right. Thanks, Mayor Peck. JD, thanks for your comments. I do have a couple questions.
Sure. And I will say, I didn't realize this was the long version and the interactive mode. I just want to make some comments, but I'm willing to.
You're hooked now, man.
That's okay.
You came on the wrong night.
Yeah.
It's one of the good, honestly, these evenings are the one time we get a chance to really engage.
I hadn't
with one
seen it,
another,
and
so,
I do think it's a good thing.
Yeah, I do too. But here are my questions. On the first part of your, I'm on record. I don't share your view here in terms of the use of a P.O. box. But I am curious if the concern is knowing who made a donation to a candidate. We can't accept, or candidates can't accept donations without a name of the person who's the donor. And right now, it's either an address or a P.O. box. So if you have a name in a P.O. box, what do you know about that donor with an address that you wouldn't know with a P.O. box? You have the amount of money, you have the name of the donor. The address gives you what in terms of comfort or assurance with an address versus a P.O. box?
Well, I'm no expert at this, but my own opinion is that
That's what this all is, a
right.
bunch of opinions.
looking at some of the recent things I am a little familiar with, there's been along the Front Range and I think in Longmont, but over some big issues, there's been out-of-town, out-of-state donations made to the local community to influence. And so as a voter, if I see that these are coming from other locations other than Longmont, it kind of makes me concerned. If I see a name, I guess I could look to see if I can figure out where this person's from, if that made a difference to me, which to me it does make a difference, but that's just in general, that it would concern me to see contributions from other areas influencing our election.
So a P.O. box has a name, a P.O. box, and a municipality, right? So you would, even with a P.O. box, you'd know it's coming from Chicago or New York or Des Moines or wherever.
That's possible. My assumption was that somebody could buy or have a P.O. box anywhere. I didn't know you had to have live in the area that you had a P.O. box.
Well, I don't know if you have to live in the area, but a P.O. box has a number and a municipality.
Yes, and so that's why I said the research. I could probably figure it out if I wanted to spend time. I'm just talking about looking at the paper, and they see me. They list a P.O. box. I'm probably not. I don't know. I don't see myself doing a whole lot of research. I never have before.
Is the concern that people from outside Longmont should not be able to donate to candidates running for city council or mayor?
No, it's of concern to me. It's not that they shouldn't be able to, but I'd like to know to make my own. And since it concerns me, it'd probably influence me.
And so the last question tonight, about half the people who've spoken tonight, the mayor asks for their name and address. About half the people here have not given their addresses.
Yes.
They've given the town they live in, the street they live on, but not their address.
Right.
Why do you suppose that's the truth, the case?
Well, I think that it's a requirement for elections. It's a kind of a fundamental capstone, or I may be using the wrong word there, but a fundamental piece of our election. It's required that you have an address, and we're debating whether it should be a post office box. Here in the, I think there are two different issues. The public to be heard is one thing, and an election laws are another.
To vote, you have to be a registered voter, and unless you've been able to I guess, shield your address because of security concerns. I know there are abused men and women that the courts have said they don't have to have their address entered in the public record,
right,
and they can still vote.
Right.
Other than that,
yeah, no, I'm not talking about voting. I'm talking about contributions.
So I want to make certain we're talking about the same thing, because it's not about voting. Yeah. But the donation is a form of political speech, right? It's
yes.
if you go look it up.
Yes.
Go look for examples of political speech, donations to candidates.
Yeah, that's why I want to know who's speaking.
What people are doing tonight, what you're doing right now,
right,
is a form of political speech. You objected in the last part of your comments to us limiting political speech, given the kinds of issues that we're dealing with. I mean, you're objecting to our limiting that. Yeah. You're encouraging us to be more inviting of political speech.
I would actually like to hear which voters are contributing. It's my own personal opinion. I'm not saying you have to restrict it to that at all, but I'd like to know that the people, I'd like to know if the people actually contributing are the voters, or are they just contributing because of an issue to
well,
our
that's
local?
Fair, but you would know that whether it's a P.O. box or an address.
If for sure that you have a post office box where you live and not actually buying one in Longmont.
Well, okay, I guess maybe people would do that just so they can make the $260 donation to a candidate.
I don't know.
Because that's the maximum amount of money we can accept from any donor.
Correct.
But as a matter of principle now, the form of political speech that we're hearing tonight, people are allowed, and they're guaranteed by the Constitution, they get to protect some measure of privacy. Just as the First Amendment protects your right to political speech, there are multiple of our Bill of Rights that protect Americans' right to privacy. The folks who didn't give their addresses tonight chose to exercise their right to privacy and the right to political speech tonight. What if, we're gonna vote on this in next week, and it's clear where I'm gonna vote. I'm not certain how the rest of this council is gonna vote. But those who choose, in my opinion, to vote to eliminate the P.O. box create a dual standard, a double standard, actually, not a dual standard, double standard. One standard if you want to exercise one form of political speech, a different standard if you want to exercise a form of political speech called a donation. And I can't, other than people object to a donation coming from out of town, if that's a problem, then maybe we ought to just limit donations to folks living in Longmont, if that's the problem we're trying to solve. But I haven't heard anybody up here yet identify a problem that's solved by excluding P.O. boxes from, along with a name, from people who want to donate to candidates.
You know, like I say, I'm no expert at this, and if your concern is protecting people's privacy, I have to respect that. In my view, just what little I look and read and have opinions about, things like Citizens United and things like that, that try to somewhat hide who's actually contributing.
Not in Longmont, they can't.
What's that?
You can't do that in Longmont because you got to have a name of the donor.
Got to have a name, and I don't know. Yeah, I'm just, as I've said, I'm just talking about my personal opinion that I would like to know where the people contributing are and who they are. And if I have a name, I probably don't know everybody, and I don't have any idea who they are. But if somebody is contributing from Longmont and they got a name, I kind of know more about something different about it.
Thanks, JD.
Yep, thank you.
Thank you, JD. For the homeless that want to contribute, just for the public to know that they can use HOPE as an address, the address at HOPE, and the address at the Hour Center. Those are the addresses that we use when we get homeless people, driver's license, whatever they need, credit cards, whatever they need, library cards, in order to be a functioning person in our society. And so far, we've only had 3 out of the 20 that did not get a street number. So having said that, the next 3 are Shams Rahman. I don't know why I crossed you off the list, Jeff. I'm so sorry. Oh, okay. Let me back up a little bit. Have a seat, Jeff. We'll get right to you. JD, Councilor Hidalgo Faring would like to make a comment.
You're not off the hook yet. No, just kidding. Actually, you had made a comment in reference to the, where was it at? The limiting public comment that was approved by planning and zoning, and then we had a change to our rules of procedure as well. And you know, I don't know if you had a chance to read the language or the paragraph.
I'll actually, again, state the same thing. I didn't know this was a long one.
No, it's all right.
I didn't read everything.
You know,
I had an opinion.
I can't. So, you know, it essentially, you know, limits that city council may prohibit public statements on upcoming matters where council may hold a quasi-judicial hearing. However, and then I'm just going to skip through, the other alternative for a resident to share their thoughts is alternatively, prior to any public quasi-judicial hearing, a speaker may submit written materials to the city staff assigned to the matter for inclusion in the administrative record that council will consider in making decisions. So there is an opportunity for residents. I think, you know, and you know, my belief is that we really need to do our due diligence to ensure that public does understand that they do have this option to be able to have it heard, rather than waiting for the hearing at the very end. So there is that opportunity
And
as well.
that really was my point in trying to bring these apart, just in reading the paper, and just some nerves were set off. Limiting people's was less transparent. And so that's what I'm urging Longmont to do, to gather some trust and confidence in our government to make sure we're not trying to limit input. So thank you for doing whatever you can to help develop trust and confidence in our our process in our government. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm not going to ask JD a question, but I do want to also say what JD says. Thanks, right? It's also possible. You know, someone may comment on the appropriateness of any sort of city planning or land use prior to a specific permit application at any time. So it's only in this specific quasi-judicial context that comments are limited to a certain time and place or to written comment. A lot of people seem to have misunderstood that. Your general public invited to be heard is as free as it has ever been.
Thank you for that. Jeff?
My name is Jeff Linroth. I live at 1227 Purdue Drive here in Longmont. I've lived in Longmont for 57 years. One of the things I like to tell people who are recent arrivals, which is pretty much anybody who's gotten here in the last 30 years, is one of the things I love about Longmont is how well governed we are. And that is the phrase I use. We are well governed, among many other beautiful things about Longmont. So because I so rarely appear in front of City Council, I wanted to take a moment to recognize you and thank you for your contribution to that legacy of good governance. The reason why I'm here is something really special is going on in Longmont. In the last 2 months, less than 2 months, an individual who you're going to hear from after me has stood up an entity known as Weight Pile on the Rockies. This is in the Big Five sporting goods store parking lot. And in all of my time in Longmont, I have seen few people with as much initiative and drive and constructive attitude and generosity as this person. The reason I wanted to bring it to your attention is we're a nation of specialists, and it's fair to say that my expertise is narrow in the field of economics and finance and accounting. And so I'm trying to support this because I have seen in just 5 or 6 weeks extraordinary positivity in this, and I'm going to touch on that a little bit. But what I'm asking, and not just today, but my ask in general is that if you come to appreciate it as I do, or even anywhere in the vicinity of how well I appreciate it, that you will support it in its current location. And I have made the assessment, a financial assessment, that its ultimate destination to be sustainable is to be on city property where the rent, which is substantial for it to be there now, won't be incurred, and the insurance cost will be less, and the cost of a portable toilet will either disappear or be less. This is a free. This is being stood up for free, and it exists because not only this man has given so much of his time, but people have given money, businesses and individuals have given equipment. This is a full gym with over 20 pieces of quality equipment. And so what the second piece that I wanted to mention is, you know, if you support it in its existing location, I think what I'm asking, and whenever I talk to people who are far more expert than I say, this is what I think I'm asking, and then I invite them to tell me what I should be asking. But what I think I'm asking you to do is to direct staff to review this situation, because we contacted members of Chris Crone and a couple of other members of the Park District, and they had a meeting about it. They got a hold of the understanding of it, but they directed us to talk to council, which makes perfect sense to me, because there's a limit to what staff should do before getting some guidance from council, which is really why that is my ask. I want to tell you, return on investment of this property for whatever you may decide to do is extraordinary, because the hard work, and I like to say as a pun, the heavy lifting has been done. The equipment has not only been donated, but it's been positioned, and there are clientele. I put together a presentation, and I thought I was done. There were 110 likes on the Facebook page for this entity, the Weight Pile, and I was making changes to it less than a week later, and there were 183 Facebook likes. Another added, another thing to consider about this is that we're not recycling this old equipment that people weren't using. We are reusing it, which is my favorite ecological thing to do. Recycling's good, but anytime you can take something that was out of service, put it back into service, you've really done something that's friendly to the environment. As I mentioned, we have 3 major expenses that the city would either have less of or none at all down the road. The small expenses that we have are for signage to let people know how to use it or when the hours are. We need just barriers to cordon it off. We don't really have that right now. And minor repairs to the equipment now and then. The padding might need to be replaced. The cabling might need to be replaced now and then. We did do a reconnaissance on one place, Roosevelt Park, because it's centrally located, public transit can reach it, and we found on that property, just around the memorial building, we found 4 locations that we decided, with our limited expertise, were suitable. They already had appropriate surfaces. One of them's even already fenced in, and we have reviewed that specific thing. But any incidence of city property is going to really let this thing live. And the last thing I want to say about it is it could even wind up on one of those 10 things to do in Longmont for visitors who are coming by, passing by, because only 4 other cities in the United States have I found that have such a facility. And I would hope and love if you have questions for me.
So thanks, Jeff. Penny King sent out some documentation that she wanted me to print up, so all the counselors have that. Penny?
King Penny. He'll be with you in a moment to clarify that.
I'm sorry.
It's all right.
Well, now I'm real curious.
Took me a week to get it right.
Sorry. So thank you for that, and thank you, King, wherever you are.
Okay. No question? No, okay.
Oh, yes, we have a question from Councilor McCoy.
Thank you, Mr. Lindroth, and thank you, Mayor Peck. We talked earlier about this, and you came to coffee with council, and I'm happy to see you here tonight, and I'm interested in looking over this document that was sent out here, and interested in hearing from King Penny. So thank you again.
You're welcome, and it should come as no surprise to you or anybody who knows me that I have spreadsheets and numbers to substantiate what would be entailed.
Thank you.
Great. Councilor Yarbrough.
Thank you, Mayor. So I guess my question is, you're looking for a city location that is outdoors for this, for the Wake Powell on the Rockies. Is that correct? Or?
That's the long-term goal that I am recommending because it's financially viable to be able to be free or near free. Because the costs are so low. The variable costs are so low in that situation. The variable costs where we are now on private property is relatively high, not just because of the rent, but also because of the toileting necessity and the liability insurance that Penny has procured. I just have an intuitive belief that the city has some form of umbrella insurance for its parks and recreation. So the piece of insurance that this might need a rider, but it wouldn't be a very big one, I wouldn't think.
And so the times of operation, say for instance, at Roosevelt Park would be 7:30 a.m. to 11, and then a.m., and then 3:30 p.m. to 7 p.m.?
Yes, and it'd be my imagination that the city wants, if it were controlling this, it would monitor attendance and determine whether those hours needed to be modified in some way to optimize the utilization.
Okay. And my last question, so what is the vision as far as how many people that you are hoping to participate in this great opportunity for the long run? Say, what is your 2-year goal, 3-year goal participation?
So let me just state explicitly, I'm speaking as Penny's assistant. I'm not in charge of the operation, but my vision of it as a long-term resident and a financial thinker is that there would probably be dozens of people a day using it because it doesn't compete with gyms. It presents itself as an alternative to inside. So when the weather's nice, you can come outside and work out outside. And just to give you an idea of the level of enthusiasm, just one more specific example. we had our first contest this last weekend, weightlifting contest. Someone came from as far away as Castle Rock to participate. We have no doubt that the gym members will participate because one of the co-winners was the proprietor of one of our local gyms. So we have good attendance from the gym staff and owners and members here so far.
Thank you.
Councilor Martin.
Thank you, Mayor Pack. Can I ask a few questions about the business model? I apologize, I didn't have a chance to read through the full thing. But you must be doing something to sustain your installation here, and you do have insurance costs. So what are your revenue sources?
I don't have that with great specificity. I've given some money, and I know that other small businesses, I've heard of 4 or 5 of them, and Penny, who comes after me, will be able to name them. I can't recall them, but it's been small businesses and individuals have just donated money.
Donated or invested?
Donated.
Okay.
And I want to, an important point is that these people made these donations before it achieved 501c3 nonprofit status, which it has now achieved. But these
That's
people,
an important point.
These people gave this equipment without even having that. They saw what was happening and they have given money even before that occurred. And that is now in place.
Okay, thanks. I guess I'll ask Penny the rest of my questions.
He will have good answers, better than I.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for your question.
Thank you,
And for all your
Jeff.
questions.
So I don't see King Penny's name on here. I see,
Shams.
oh,
Shams.
Shams Rahman.
I am her. I mean, him, ma'am.
Good, I'm so glad you made that mistake. It puts us on an even keel now.
How you doing? My name is Shams Rockman. I live on 800 Emory Street. I am the, well, I sent Jeff over here to do the heavy lifting first, you know what I mean? I come through and clean up. I'm the curator of the Weight Pile of the Rockies. I just kind of tend to it or whatnot like that. It's a community space. Ms. Martin had asked who and the revenues and things like that. Comes from different sources. A lot of people off the contact list, people I've worked out with here in Longmont, contributed $50, $100 here. A lot of businesses. Got an RMA pumping company, District 303 Art of Hair, Liberty Auto Sales, just to name a few. My old insurer, Shad Insurance Agency, it's out of Broomfield though. I mean, a lot of people, they heard the idea, and you know what I mean, outdoor gym, let's have at it. You know, so that's pretty much it. I didn't really come with anything prepared to say. I sent you guys a, like the mission statement, and I'm sure a lot of you, probably a couple of you have gotten emails from some random guy. You know what I mean, with some questions about funding. Be like, whoa, you know. So I reached out to Chris Crone at Recreation because we have played basketball and worked out together before. You know what I mean. So I've been trying to just reach out to people that I've known. The network. I have a small network here in Longmont. Somebody had asked the Roosevelt Park question, and my envision is to have this thing open all day. You know, but with the time limits and the things like that, I'm still trying to generate volunteers to spend time. Money's the easy thing, I think. Well, I wouldn't say easy thing, but you know what I mean? People tend to give that, but the time for people to sit out there is kind of, kind of hard to come by. I mean, people are busy nowadays. I mean, I can get an hour or so, or, you know what I mean, 2 to run to the bank and do some things or appointments and stuff like that. But people sitting out there like 3 or 4 hours. And so, like I said, that's what I think the nonprofit status will help with. You know, there's different resources and people more willing to help a nonprofit than, you know what I mean, me asking, hey, can you help me with this or stuff like that. And like I said, but trying to get the city involved, the city is a way better marketer than I am. I'm more of a weightlifter. I apologize. You know what I mean? And you guys have more advertising, more participation. You know, like we just had a bench press competition Saturday, and the turnout, like he said, was great. You know what I mean? Other gyms hung up flyers, you know, because my thing is I'm not competing with them at all. I go to Anytime Fitness on Francis, proud representative, you know what I mean, every morning, you know, and then I go to my space after and I help people. And, you know, the main thing is for people to be active. People to participate, people without access to memberships, people with memberships, people in, you know what I mean, in neighborhoods that aren't the best, you know what I mean, or things like that is my vision. You know, I got discipline from weight training in my life that I never had before. I mean, some people who know me, they know I had, you know what I mean, some minor problems in my life and, you know what I mean, things like that. But the weightlifting, you know, it brought a discipline in my life and a way for me to process through things that, you know, I didn't have. And so my vision is to give that back to the community. I mean, some people have meditation, some people have yoga or Pilates, things like that. You know, some about lifting weights and working out with others that it creates a community feel. I think I gave one example, like, you know, how you guys do the block parties. You know, it's just a different atmosphere. People are reaching out, people are talking, people are connecting, you know, and everybody who comes down there, you know, they work out together. They, you know, they work, you know, people who don't even know each other. Hey, what are you doing over there? You know what I mean? And it's just a communication thing. You know, I even watch people, you know, like even, you know, we cleaned up the parking lot. Big 5 parking lot wasn't the best, you know, and Tebow gave us a chance, you know, and we cleaned that up. And sometimes you'll see homeless people, or I'm sorry, people without homes, you know what I mean, pick up trash, you know, as they walk through. And I tell them thank you, you know, appreciate it. Just the humanity aspect of it all, you know. But like I said, in the long term, you know, I'm not a fundraiser or, you know, I'm just a guy with an idea. You know, like this thing, I feel like it's bigger than me. It's always been bigger than me. It's just something I would, like I said, just to give back. And, you know what I mean, that's where we're at with that.
Councilor Martin.
Yeah, are you associated with the King Penny Supplement Company?
Yes, ma'am.
And is that a for-profit or a non-profit?
My supplement company is for profit.
Okay, and is it part of your vision that the weight pile of the Rockies installations would be branded with the King Penny brand?
Not at all, ma'am. It started off, it was the banner had said King Penny and RMA Pumping or something like that. Like just everybody who had, but there was not room on the flyer. So it kind of just changed, you know what I mean, and stuff like that. And then a lot of people, you know, like, you know, my bodybuilding stuff and things like that, and like an online presence. So it was kind of used as like also marketing, like, oh, we know him, he works out, you know what I mean? Try to get people to come.
Sure.
But the Weight Pile in the Rockies is a free fitness nonprofit entity.
Yes, my question about branding was more, if it were to move to city facilities, would there be an association with
No,
the
ma'am.
King Penny name?
No, ma'am.
All right, thank you.
Councilor Yarbrough.
All right, thank you. I'm not going to ask a whole bunch of questions. I just want to say I'm pretty sure I'll see you at Juneteenth at Roosevelt Park telling people about your weightlifting.
Yes, ma'am. I will be celebrating Juneteenth for sure.
June 17th at 1 o'clock at
Yes.
Roosevelt Park. And I want to see some of that weightlifting stuff you talking about.
Yes, ma'am.
All right,
I'll for
all
sure
right.
be out there. I appreciate
Well, good.
that. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you for your vision and your passion.
Hey, thank you.
I think you just met your marketer.
Oh, that's it. That's it right there. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
And I also, too, I invite you guys to come down, take a look, or come down and participate. And if you guys, you know what I mean, have any fitness needs or anything like that, we have personal trainers that are there and stuff like that. People can help.
Great.
No, ma'am. We get 7.5. And I barely found them. But, you know what I mean? Like we're up there. Hey, thank you guys for your time.
Thank you. We're going to take a 5-minute break. We have, we've got about 13. So. Yeah, it's right here. No, but I can, I'll have Michelle or somebody make copies. I think we overdid our 5 minutes. Thank you. We have about 15 more people that are on the list, so if we can come back. The next 3 people on the list are Morgan Upton, Steve Altschuler, and Shaquille Dalal. I'll say that one more time. Morgan, Steve, and Shaquille. You can take the 3 seats up here. Sean, I was told that they can't hear you when you speak, so can you get closer? Okay. So Morgan is up first. Hi. I think we all did. Don't, there you go.
My name is Morgan Upton. I'm at 4719 Luca Drive. My name is Morgan Upton. I'm at 4719 Luca Drive. I'm going to be talking to you guys about the rec center wanting to be built off of Clover Basin and Grandview Meadow Drives. Or Drive, yeah. So, I believe we should be standing out in the crowd, I think you guys think that as well, of cities in Colorado, and be a striving force to look up to, because we are not the city we were back in 2008 whenever this was proposed or voted upon back in 2008. I understand. So wherever the rec center gets built, I'm interested in knowing how you will incorporate the commitment of the council's 100% renewable energy goal made in 2018, with the goal of that to be reached in 2030. Can we restructure the layout of the landscaping to incorporate native plants, grasses, trees, fruit trees, shrubs, and maybe clover to replace long grass? Because it provides, long grass provides really nothing. Besides, it just gets sprayed, lots of chemicals. And it's extremely expensive to maintain. We can even make it educational. If the build gets done or not, we can still plant local and native, local flora and fauna. Every spot can have a sign that educates the public on the different plants, what animals it helps, and how much water a year that square foot area saves. You can collaborate with resources that are not established in other cities, which will allow us to stand out and help these organizations expand. One of them being People and Pollinators Actions Plan. I think I said that right. There's a chapter of those guys right here in Longmont. A fun fact that I learned from one of their seminars is, did you know that there are about 1,000 species of bees and only 950 of them are actually found here in Colorado? Fun fact. This is the only kid-friendly public nature space we have on that side of town, and it's within walking distance of a lot of neighborhoods and schools. And I understand the enticement of that as well. Traffic is another thing that has to be addressed. We are a walk or bike community, and crossing the street is already a hazardous task because of the growth. Kids driving and people driving through this area that are unfamiliar. We are going to see a huge influx of people to the area because everyone loves new things. Because of the inevitable influx of people, cars, and incidences that will occur, we will start to drive our kids to school and even to that facility itself. A signal at the intersection of Clover Basin Drive and Grandview Meadow Drives would help in crossing the street over there, but unfortunately will not help us get in and out of our neighborhoods while driving or walking. In fact, it would most likely make it harder due to how it would slow down traffic and create a jam, especially in the mornings and afternoons whenever school's getting in and out. Bringing public facilities also brings an invitation to certain behavior in individuals. that we have already been dealing with since the opening of the park and restrooms. We have encountered incapacitated individuals on our walking paths and an increase in safety concerns that we didn't have before. So the proposal for this building brings into question the safety of our community, the environmental sustainability of the area, and having adequate staff. Unfortunately, we all see that there is an influx of that going on. I believe with or without the build, we can make the space better. And remember, we are the ones that have to live with the unprecedented repercussions of your choices. I appreciate you guys. Thank you.
Thank you, Morgan. Councillor Martin.
Thank you. Just a couple of things. It sounded like maybe we're unclear from what you had to say, that the construction of the building and the development or landscaping, further landscaping of Dry Creek Park are two separate development projects. And so far, we haven't discussed putting both of those on the ballot, either separately or together. So the council really only discussed the building. That could change because the final ballot referral has not been made yet. So I'm just throwing that out, that they aren't necessarily all together. And there's been no discussion of turning the Dry Creek area into a Roosevelt Park, East Coast kind of park. It's almost all parks development now is done with native growth and sustainable development.
Yeah, I saw a few things on that on Longmont sustainability of what is offered in that.
Okay, yeah, I just wanted to make that clear. Thanks.
Okay.
Great, thank you.
Thanks.
Steve Altschuler.
Steve Altschuler, and I'm glad to know I don't have to give my address anymore.
Yes, you do.
Taylor Drive. So I have a little extra time, so I'm just going to comment a little bit about that. I live in that area, and when I first bought 16 years ago, they were saying there was going to be a rec center. Part of me would love to have a rec center because I could walk there and go for a swim and work out and walk home. But I also realize it is going to increase traffic tremendously in that area, and sadly probably also increase crime in that area. So those are things that have to be thought about. As Morgan? As she was saying, as she was speaking, I was thinking about in Las Vegas, they have walkways over the streets. So maybe it'd be possible to consider putting in like walking bridges around the Clover and Grandview intersection area so the kids could go back and forth to the rec center more safely without having to be driven back and forth. So that's just my thought on what she was saying. I wanted to talk about crime. Today in the paper, in the Greeley Tribune, there was an article with a man named Roman Gutierrez, who had had his 1999 Subaru Outback stolen from his Westminster home. And they also took his catalytic converter, which he found out when he got the car back. And the first article is Westminster. Vehicle thefts in Westminster have gone from 859 in 2020 to 1,259 in 2022, up 50% in 2 years. Last week, Westminster passed on first reading 4 ordinances to address increasing driving crime and car parts theft, and brought prosecution for several auto-related crimes in-house to the municipal court. Mayor Pro Tem David DeMott said the goal is to hold people accountable and to show Westminster is not the city to break the law in. In June of last year, June 27th, Aurora, there was an article where it said Aurora may now be the first city to punish car theft in municipal court with mandatory jail time. In Aurora, from 2020 to 2021, Aurora saw a 40% increase in car theft in 1 year. They now have a mandatory first-time offenders get 60 days, Repeat offenders get a minimum of 120 days in jail. This weekend, after sharing my wife's car for the past 6 months, I bought a new car. Being afraid that it would be stolen or keyed by a jealous person, I drove my 22-year-old truck tonight. With crime going up and people just destroying other people's property, I decided to be safe, and I would like to not have to think that about Longmont. It's not just car theft. Criminals can walk in and steal up to $2,000 per day of merchandise from Walmart, Kohl's, Dick's Sporting Goods, anywhere, and not even be arrested. In case you think, well, the law says $9.95, police actually wait until it's $2,000 so they can show a cost basis instead of a retail price. In San Francisco is losing Nordstrom's, Walgreens, Neiman Marcus, Whole Foods, Home Depots, and more because they can't afford the millions in theft. So what I wanted to ask you tonight is to please take steps to protect Longmont citizens and businesses before shutdowns and job loss occur in Longmont. Plus, crime will lower Longmont's property values, and we do not want to become another San Francisco. If you have comments, I'm welcome to hear them, but mostly I wanted to make those statements.
Councillor Martin.
Yeah, I just would like to know what do you, in order to enforce, attain the level of law enforcement that you're advocating, what do you think the standing police force, public safety force in Longmont should be?
Whatever it takes.
And are you willing to pay the taxes it takes?
We're being charged like crazy right now with property taxes, and I assume that the excess in property taxes could go towards more police protection. And my question would be, do we have more? I don't know the answer.
Okay,
do we have,
that would have been a good thing to start with.
No. I don't know the answer to what I'm about to ask.
Okay.
Since they started the defund police a couple of years ago, do we have the same or more or less police that we did back then?
Well, we have more wrecks. I'm not sure whether the
No, I'm
what
talking
the
about
staffing.
police officers.
I'm sorry, I meant we have at least as many positions budgeted for police officers as we did then. We did not defund the police.
Okay.
Okay, I am not aware of the current staffing level, whether we are above or below staffing, but we certainly have not defunded our police force. No one ever considered that in Longmont.
Which is great for Longmont, but I do know in the state of Colorado, car theft, we are like #1 in the country for car theft. So people are not being prosecuted when they commit these crimes.
And that's the judicial system.
Okay, but I'm saying if other municipalities, if other cities can pass ordinances to punish car theft, why can't Longmont?
It's a good thing to look at. And what I would like is the stats on crime in Longmont, versus what it is in Westminster. But it's a good thing for us to talk about and look at it.
Okay.
So, Shaquille.
Shaquille Dalal, 219 Francis Street. I want to say in response to something that you said, that walkways over streets are not pedestrian infrastructure, they are car infrastructure. They're infrastructure that exists to privilege cars so that pedestrians have to go out of their way. The real solution is to stop treating pedestrians as second-class citizens and put street-level infrastructure that allows pedestrians to get where they need to go safely. Anyway, sorry, that was a digression. The cost of housing is too damn high. This is the most important and urgent problem that the city of Longmont faces. I know that many of you are passionate about this issue as well, so I have a few thoughts that I want to share about this and then a few questions about it. As general principle, I believe that cities are for people that live here. Longmont's a wonderful place to live, and so more people want to live here than we have the housing inventory to accommodate. We can't build a 12-foot electric fence around the city in order to keep new people out, and in my opinion, it is unseemly, unneighborly, and un-American, and ultimately self-sabotaging to try and keep people out by making it impossible to build new housing. Look at San Francisco if you want to see where that path goes. We have to build more housing. Like most American cities, Longmont hasn't built enough to keep up with the population growth for at least a decade. We need to build so much housing that the supply outstrips demand and the price of housing goes down. But we have to do that in a way that makes it possible to preserve the things that make Longmont great. We have to do it in a way that allows for neighborhoods to change while keeping what makes them different. Rather than huge 100-unit developments that generate public opposition, we need to allow small property owners to convert their single-family residences into duplexes, add ADUs to their backyards, and allow people who live in a neighborhood to make incremental changes based on what they believe their neighbors want and need. Here are the questions that I have for you. To achieve these goals, we need to make changes to the Land Development Code. In as much or as little detail as you would like to go into, what would you want to see in a land development code that implements these goals that you would be willing to vote for? My second question, part of what makes building housing so expensive is the number of approvals and the bureaucratic process that is required. The housing reform bill that got killed at the state level this year would have required streamlining that process, as does Prop 123, which passed last year and that I assume Longmont would like funding for to create additional affordable housing. Are you open to allowing more housing construction to be by right, obviously with the understanding that that construction would have to comply with the code? And then my third question is about the city examining hidden barriers to housing construction. I don't know if this is the biggest barrier, this is just an example that I happen to know about, but it's fire trucks. I recently learned that Longmont requires streets to be 26 feet wide in order to be able to accommodate fire trucks with ladders if the building is going to be over 3 stories tall. For reference, lots of streets in Old Town where the housing demand is highest and where most of this housing would presumably be built doesn't meet that requirement. In communication with members of the Public Safety Department, I learned that this is a requirement we're inheriting from the International Fire Code. Safety and access for other critical public services are important, but there are cities all over the world that don't have streets 26 feet wide where they put out fires and collect trash. 26 feet is also a lot of asphalt and is not only bad for the environment, but it wastes our most precious public resource, which is the land that the city occupies and what we choose to do with that land. So my question is, what is the city doing to discover and fix these kind of hidden requirements that make housing construction more expensive?
Do I see anyone? Well, I'll tackle a couple of them. First of all, the number of approvals in the planning takes too long. Is that what you're telling me?
This is a thing that I've heard contributes to the cost of housing, yes.
You know, that's hard to answer because it's not it's not like an overall problem with every single development. Every development's different. It has to do with their financing. Can they get their financing on time? It has to do with the goals, the timelines, and when they need to get their paperwork in, and then if it needs to be looked at and there are mistakes, it goes back to them. So the developers also have their own timelines and goals that they have to meet. So to say one thing would make a change just doesn't work.
That's why I mentioned by right. So my understanding, not as a property developer myself, but I am on the board of the Longmont Community Foundation, which recently considered creating some sort of financing option available for people who wanted to build build affordable housing. And we were looking at funding the soft costs that are upfront in those projects, and we had a couple of conversations with Harold Dominguez.
Oh, good.
And what we learned is that that's actually not a useful thing that for the Community Foundation to allocate its dollars to, because a lot of the risk in that process for developers, as we understood it, is actually associated with the uncertainty of the process. It's exactly what you said. It's that it depends, and it depends on different scales, but sometimes on the same scale, whether you're building 100 units or whether you're building 1 unit. And so very often what drives developers to build these massive apartment complexes or big developments on potentially undeveloped land, rather than trying to redevelop existing occupied land, which is both better for the environment and increases the city's tax base in a more efficient way, is that they are able to defray their risk by making the projects bigger and bigger and bigger, but that also generates the public opposition that I'm sure that all of you are very tired of hearing about. So I feel like there's got to be something in the code or something in the planning and zoning procedures, something that we can do to both eliminate that uncertainty, and I hate that word because it is a buzzword for business things, but some way that we can shorten these timelines and provide a lot more clarity for people who want to build more housing to say, if I decide that I want to do this, I will know in 90 days whether or not the project is happening, or something like that, which I think is the Prop 123 requirement anyway.
Counselor Martin.
Thank you, Mayor Peck. I actually was one of the few people who called this city's support of Prop 123 into question, because I wanted to be sure that Longmont could ensure that the buildings produced under Prop 123's timeline were still safe and met code. And the city staff told me that after some discussion of the matter, that the city the planning and zoning staff could ensure that the requirements were met, and that Longmont should therefore write a letter of support to the General Assembly in support of Prop 123. So I believe that the staff has a plan for doing that, and I think that we would really love to know when the public will see that plan and understand how the requirements of Prop 123 will be met, because we sure need the money.
My understanding is that the city of Longmont's required to register a plan with the state by November 1st. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
And it would be good for the council to see it first.
Yes, I would also like the opportunity to see it as a member of the public.
Good, we'll take that under consideration. As far as changing the land development code, we've already made some changes, and it seems like we were making changes to that code quite often. And I don't know exactly what type of changes you would be referring to. We do allow ADUs. We do allow townhouses, condominiums to build 4 or 5 stories, depending upon what that development looks like. We have partnerships with the city, partners with developers. We have quite a few developments in the queue as far as developers wanting to develop in Longmont. It isn't a fast process. It just isn't. And again, there are so many variables in it that we'd have to take each development as it goes and explain what's going on with it, and they change. Even halfway through, sometimes they change. So it's really difficult to actually answer some of those questions in a forum like this, because it's such a huge question that you're asking.
Certainly. So for example, on the ADU regulations, for example, it's true, Longmont does allow ADUs so long as the HOA that home is in doesn't preempt the requirements so that you cannot have an ADU there. But there are other regulations, again, that make it difficult to build an ADU in Longmont, or financially infeasible, even in areas where it is technically allowed. So for example, you cannot build an ADU that is more than 50% of the square footage of the primary home. You can't build an ADU closer to the curb than the primary home. So for example, there's a house on a lot near my home where the house was literally built abutting the alley. And so there is like 70 feet of open space between the curb and that house. That house is not allowed to have an ADU. Nor could they build an additional property on the front of that home and then designate the thing that used to be the primary home the ADU. And so the only option available to them would be to tear down the house, build a new house, but not an ADU, and then later apply for an ADU permit and then build an ADU. That seems like it's making the process harder to add inventory to the community that I think we need.
So once again, we'd have to look at that specific instance, and we just can't do that tonight. So.
Sure, but my point is that we need to stop looking at specific instances and make it just more possible to build housing without having to jump through as many hoops for stuff that everyone knows we're probably going to approve anyway.
Okay. Councilor Waters.
Thanks, Mayor Beck. Just, Shaquille, good questions. in your question about process and the time for permitting reminds me that and I'm gonna, this is for Harold or for Glenn, we did budget this year for an ombudsman, did we not? All right, in 2023. When I came, that's in the 2023 budget.
We have one.
So, 5 years, when I came on this council, one of the early discussions we had about the permitting process was the employment of an ombudsman. And for a variety of reasons, it didn't happen. A year or so later, we did actually, we contracted with a consultant to work with nonprofits that lacked sophistication in the whole permitting process to help them get through the process in a more timely way. And that became kind of an interesting R&D opportunity because the city learned a lot about how to take advantage of that and what it means for the various departments. And I'm not certain what we've learned since we are employing our own ombudsman, but it does suggest that would be a good update to get at some point in time on what we've learned and how it has accelerated the process. Because I know that's the intent, to reduce time, because every week, right, adds cost without necessarily adding value to the cost of our residents, and that's clearly not what the city wants to do. But that is an answerable question, not tonight. It is an answerable question, and I think we ought to get an update at some point. It would be useful for me if nobody else is interested, and I'm guessing some are. But good question.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So the next people on our list are Lance Whitaker, Marianne Nihas, and Suzanne Reed.
All right. My name's Lance Whitaker, 1750 Collier Street. I've lived in Longmont for over 40 years now, as you all know. Today is National Hole in My Bucket Day. It is also National Creativity Day and National Water a Flower Day and Mint Julep Day. So there's your days today. I would like to talk about fruit trees in parks. A lot of concern was over, planting trees and stuff like that. And while maintenance is a little more expensive on fruit trees, we hardly have any fruit trees in any of our parks. So planting fruit trees is a very good gardening technique that a lot of people know about for maintaining soil growth, for, food, obviously, and a lot of times community awareness. So I would encourage fruit trees in parks.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. And council, of course.
Thank you, Lance.
You're
Marianne?
welcome. Any questions?
Oh, are there any questions for Lance?
Any questions?
He's dying for a question, I can tell, so.
Come on, y'all got plenty of questions.
Okay, Lance, what kind of a fruit tree would you like us to plant?
Cherry trees.
All right, you got it.
Because I make a beautiful cherry wine. I got 5 gallons of it in my house if you want to come by.
No, thank you. On record, no, thank you.
Needs to be bottled in July. Thank you, Mayor and Council.
You're welcome. Marianne Nihas. Is she here? Okay, I'm sorry about that. Suzanne?
Hello.
Hello.
Thank you. I'm very appreciative of and grateful to be a citizen of the United States of America, where we do have inalienable rights to speech and privacy. And thank you, Mr. Waters. You were very good at explaining and reminding us of our constitutional rights to speak. And I'm going to exercise that.
unincorporated Boulder County, but what city are you with?
In the interest of privacy, I would just like to give you my P.O. box, and that is P.O. 19083.
No, we don't accept P.O. boxes.
Well, you have that record on the registration. There's a registration that I put my. That's not how it works. Oh, really? Because I just thought Mr. Waters said that we do have a right to privacy.
You know, we're going to take up that subject next week. He was speaking about our
contributions to a
campaign
political
finance law.
campaign.
Yeah.
So
at this
so
forum,
I don't have the right to speak.
No, you have the right to speak, but we would like to know your address.
I
please.
said my P.O. box is 19083. I'm not trying to get in a fight. I'm just trying to protect my privacy. Excuse me? Excuse me? I'm just trying to protect my privacy.
Suzanne.
Yes.
Would you mind when you are finished of giving your address to Michelle?
It is on the registration, and I will be happy to give that. It is on
That
the
would be great.
registration. My residential address is on the registration.
What registration?
Well, the paper I signed out. Yeah, right. In order, it's there. I just don't want to have it recorded.
No, I'm sorry. You have unincorporated Boulder County.
Yes, but there's the address too.
No.
Well, I'll be happy to do that afterwards.
That would be great.
Okay?
Thank you so much.
I'll be happy to do that.
That's perfect.
My reason for being here is smart meters.
Okay.
And my concern, I have lived in Boulder County for 40 years. I've lived in an area, it's unincorporated, and we have experienced a number of wildfires. And traditionally, we think of wildfires as being in the woods, but we know from December 21 that we had a huge fire in Louisville. And I know everybody here, whether we live in Louisville or not, we felt the pain of people losing their homes. My issue with the smart meters is the record of starting on fire and exploding. And this has occurred so many times that hundreds and thousands of smart meters have been recalled in 4 states. And that's Arizona, Florida, Oregon, and Pennsylvania. They've been recalled because they have caused fatalities and serious injuries. And that is my primary concern. I was horrified to learn that if a smart meter starts on fire, explodes, most of us would grab, like if we were outside near it, we'd grab a garden hose. We'd squirt it with water. But the unfortunate technology, when you use water and a garden hose, you can be electrocuted. And that's horrifying for anybody because it could happen to anybody just out of a reflex action. And the reason, so that is my sole purpose of being here, is just to bring to awareness. I don't want to use more than my 5 minutes, and I don't know how far I've gotten, but in closing, I'd like to say that I do support the passing of the resolution by the city of Longmont to halt the smart meter rollout until it can be shown that this technology is safe to be attached to our residences. And I thank you very much for this opportunity.
Thank you, and I'm sorry about the.
It's okay. I'll be happy to provide it.
That would be great.
Yes.
Thank you so much. Oh, Councilor Waters, Martin. I missed it.
Excuse me, ma'am.
Suzanne, Councilor Martin would like to comment.
Who is your electricity provider?
Excel.
Ah. Do they have smart meters now?
They are installing them all over the county.
Okay.
They're installing them in Louisville, they're installing them in Boulder, they're installing them, and so they are widely installed. And I just don't understand why it's an issue to really do research on a meter that is going to be attached to our homes. I don't understand that. Have you done your research?
Yes.
What have you found? What have you found out?
I have found that they are safe.
They are
that
safe.
That the current generation of smart meters, which has not been correctly described by the resolution, does not have any of the problems that you're talking about. No associated fires with the model that.
And how have
St.
they
Louis-
been? How have they been tested? Who has tested them? And the other question: have you been in contact with the states that recalled hundreds of thousands of smart meters to find out how they corrected it? Now,
There has been no recall of this model?
oh, there has. Well, I don't know what model you're
Yes,
talking
you
about,
don't.
but
Do
I
you know
do
what
know that-
model? What do you know? What model?
No,
that
I don't.
Longmont is installing.
I don't. Could you share that with us and give us
Yes,
your
it's
give
called
your evidence,
Revelo, and
please?
it's never had a ZB chip in it. It's not manufactured
Okay.
that way.
Well, then you should be fine, and everybody should be
yes,
fine.
we should.
But the question that you brought up is that you said that it's fine. It's not exploding. It's not starting fires, and so we can rely on your answer to be in fact based. Is that correct? Is that correct?
I am a very fact-based person. I didn't make any of that up.
Oh, but you did not say that was correct. You said you're a fact-based person. That's not saying that
Are you
that
an
is correct.
attorney?
No, are you?
Let's
I'm
end
a
this right
scientist.
now.
Oh,
She has answered
that
the
makes it-
questions.
Thank you very much.
so much,
Thank
Suzanne.
you. Thank you.
The next three people are Mike Sandoval, Strider, and Kendra Pearsall. So Mike, you're our first.
See my time. Mike Sandoval, 242 East Mountain View. I've been a resident of Longmont over 40 years. Been paid property taxes over 30 years. My first comment was on the increase in property taxes by over 33%. I'll just say like Jerome Powell, he, the federal chairman, he said that he doesn't want inflation to go greater than 2%, and yet property taxes is going at 33%. So I'm like, why isn't the government communicating with each other or following the rules? That's one reason it's failing. I also went to a town hall meeting, and they mentioned that the Homestead Act was written in like 2001, and right now I think it's $250,000 that the seniors, if you're 65 and over and live in your property for over 10 years, that you get deductions on the first $250,000. But that was also built a number calculated in 2001. But now that we're looking at Longmont at 2023, the laws haven't been updated. And I see that, okay, well, what's the value of a property here in Longmont? It's whatever, 500, 550. So I think that rule should be changed from 250 to 550, and that'll be an advantage to the seniors. Granted, I know those people who want that money are gonna complain, but also the seniors have had their property a long time. You know, they've met those rules, and a lot of them are Social Security. So, and they're not working, so it's, you know, here's their chance to have that advantage. So I just want to make that comment. Another subject I didn't really want to talk about, but I guess I have to, is Senate Bill 23-148. I know Mayor Pack brought a legislator into Longmont. I did talk to her, and it's about a bill concerning property used to illegally manufacturing drugs, especially methamphetamine in Colorado. It was introduced to the Senate on April 24th, 2023, and passed the House on May 6, 2023, but it hasn't been signed by the governor. The problem with that is there's only one item that's been approved. I mean, it says a law enforcement agency and a certified industrial hygienist must notify the department upon discovering an illegal drug laboratory that manufactured methamphetamine on residential property. Okay, so the current rules before was that a drug manufacturer and smoking had the same strict rules, but now it looks like they're breaking out a drug lab, and that's fine. That is poisonous. That should have the strictest rules possible. But smoking meth is another item. It should be separated, and it shouldn't have as strict rules. So it looks like they might have separated that item out, but that was only one item. There's a lot more to it than that. And because the problem is it's all the costs are associated with the residential user. Longmont Housing has to pay for it. Duplex property, people have to pay for that or their own house. So I quickly went to the AI, artificial engineering, and asked that question, artificial intelligence. And they said what you should do is educate the public about the dangers and signs of meth use and abuse, provide support and resources for people who are struggling with meth addiction, so give them some therapy, implement prevention and intervention strategies that target high-risk groups, such as, I guess, the youth who are going to start using meth, unfortunately, pregnant women and people with mental health. This is all AI information. I did not create it. They said collaborate with local agencies, organizations, and stakeholders to develop a comprehensive and coordinated response to the meth problem, which is getting treatment, let the law enforcement know, and then let there be community development. And it also said seek funding from state and federal sources to help with meth detection, cleanup, and rehabilitation of affected properties and areas. Because right now, residential insurance does not cover. I know there's a new residential company that is starting to block new houses to support them because of the fires in California and Oregon. So they're just getting swamped with high costs, so they're not accepting new amendments. So basically, the homeowners on themselves. And I just wanted to say that I did write a letter. You gave me a card to the legislator. I wrote a letter, email, and only one item passed. But I'm hoping there needs to be more work on this, a lot more work to help the resident.
So Mike, what was that bill number that you?
Senate Bill 23-148.
Oh, you've got it. Okay. Thank you. And for the property tax, there is going to be on the ballot this year an amendment, a bill about addressing the property tax. I don't know the number of it. It's called the HH bill. And I haven't read it completely, but I suggest you read that bill. It's not perfect, but it is a help for everybody in the state on the property taxes. That's all I can say about it, because I know that the legislators are working on that. It's frustrating because it is our legislation that did away with our protection on property tax, and now we're trying to correct it. So pay attention in November. And does anybody know what that bill number is? Yes, it is SB 148. The one he was referring to. No, I'm talking about the new property tax bill that is called HH. Oh, they don't, okay. HH, they don't have a bill number for it.
Okay.
So hopefully that will work. I also think it never hurts to contact your county treasurer, assessor.
Okay.
and appeal it. At this point, I think that that's all the tools that we have to deal with it. But I agree, it's too much. It's killing us. Councillor Martin.
Thank you, Mayor Peck. I should add that we have now 9 days to appeal to the county assessor.
Thank you for that, Marcia. Okay, thank you very much, Mike. Strider, what do you have for us tonight? Strider, can you pull that microphone up to your mouth?
Yeah, Strider Benston, 951 17th Avenue. By the way, all the high school kids that have been here the last several months, they all gave the high school as their address. So I don't think other people should be treated radically differently. That doesn't seem fair. I think the Longmont Police Department has been amazingly good service for the last 40 years. Before then, I think it was more biased in the way they function. But by the way, a month ago, I biked into Boulder on my e-bike, and it was stolen in Boulder. So there's a lot of real professional thieves in Boulder. And I actually had written something I wanted to say tonight, but I couldn't get my notebook in my mountain bike case, and I forgot to bring it, so I'm just rambling. Anyway, one major thing, this is a book called Gunfight, just came out a week or two ago. Ryan Busey, he was a major salesman in the gun industry, sold Kimber guns, Kimber rifles, lives in Kalispell, Montana, and he writes about his own story about being a gun promoter and then seeing how the culture was falling apart and being destroyed by the gun industry, and became an advocate of saving our society from the gun industry. The mass killings is absolutely policy by one wing of our political system. They're promoting vigilante violence, Texas and Florida especially, and it's connected with the insurrection, it's connected with the assault on medical care and assault on Social Security, assault on voting rights, the overtaking of the Supreme Court and worshiping of dictators around the world, and the obstruction of Congress. When Congress can't function, what's happened, the Supreme Court decided to start becoming the legislature and making laws. If you know the Dobbs case in Mississippi, it said, roll abortion rights from maybe 22 weeks back to 15. Well, it was bad, but it was sane. And then the Supreme Court decided, we'll make a new law, we'll roll it back to 6 weeks. I mean, that's the kind of game that is going on. And the illegal appointment of the Supreme Court, denying President Obama his appointment. And the debt crisis right now, the point of it, I mean, the Trump Congress, they passed $3 trillion tax cuts for the billionaires so they don't have to pay any taxes and dump it all on the people. And then they say, now we have a debt crisis, so we have to cut spending and, get rid of environmental protection, get rid of all that. It is policy of one wing of our society that is doing that, and the gun culture and the mass killings is part of it. You create fear, and then you sell more guns to the people. Oh, other people are shooting, therefore I have to have more guns. Everywhere you have more guns, you have more killings. And in every home for the last 40 years, every home that has a gun has 3 times more deaths in the home than those who don't have a gun. And that's been steady for the last 40 years. And it goes along with the coup and the insurrection and the vigilante violence. And if we don't reawaken our society, Florida, that says kill woke, you know, they're abolishing history and literature and poetry.
Thank you, Strider.
And no one's ever asked me hardly anything. Is there anyone that cares to address any of those points?
Councilor Yarbrough.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll be quick because it's after 10 o'clock and I know people want to go home. But Strider, I know you are a historian and you have a lot of information. Throughout the years of living in the city of Longmont, what is your take on, I would like to know, what is your take on crime? And when you sit here throughout the night and you hear about the smart meters, you've seen a lot within the city and in our world. So I know you didn't ask about smart meters, but I would love to hear you. I've never heard you say anything about smart meters, but I also want to know your opinion about the crime in the city of Longmont.
On the smart meters, I'm learning from both sides, and I see corrections about what people are stating, and I don't want to make formal comments on things that I don't have a high level of understanding. But on the crime, you know of the 2 Mexican kids that were killed in about 1980. And since then, Longmont Police has really, I think, functioned well. But there was a pretty big crime wave in the early 2000s, up until they passed the marijuana legalization, and then the tagging went down, the crime went down, and you know, if you don't have an abolition game going on like the alcohol back in the 30s, Chicago, the gang wars and all that kind of stuff, it's really gone down and noticeably. The tagging and the vandalism and stuff. There may be other crimes that are stable or gone up, but a lot of that has really gone down. And I notice and I appreciate that. And I think the fact that we have a viable and functional city council is part of that. People can address their grievances. And I was a member of the Longmont Election Commission back about 15 years ago, and there was a lot of illegal money that came into the Longmont election, mostly from Western Tradition Partnership or something like that. And we had a quasi-legal election commission. I was a member of it. And the first thing that city council that got elected did was to abolish the election commission so we couldn't complete our work. And that's kind of how the political game often gets played. And Citizens United basically said secret money has the right to steal our entire electoral process, and we have to get rid of those kind of things if we're going to survive as a society and as a democracy.
Strider.
And, yeah.
Yeah, thank you so much. We need to, I could listen to you all night, but unfortunately it is all night. So we need to move on.
Well, the
Thank you so
sustainability conference we had about 15 years ago, we had really good public dialogue. We
Okay.
need that kind of thing.
I agree. Thank you so much. Is Kendra Pearsall here? No? Okay. Dwayne Lees, Stan Toll, and Audrey Lovato.
My name is
You're
My
good.
name is Dwayne Lease, and I live at 2686 Pearl Howlett Road, Longmont, Colorado. I wanted to come down and address the city council about having actual addresses on contributions. I think it's critical, it's important, it's a first step, and just what Strider was talking about, the amount of inequity in our financial system is causing an imbalance in the entire society. And what you have is you have money that is starting to affect, and it is already, it is affecting our political system. This creates a positive feedback loop. A positive feedback loop, to describe it for this particular process, money elects people, and you say, well, no, they don't, it's just speech. But if I can put my advertisements on TV and on radio and in print, and I can say it over and over and over and over and over and over, that's propaganda. And it works. It works. So now they get their people into office because they have enough money. It's not even an overhead for them. People who are making $1 billion a year. Our political process, the whole campaigns are maybe at this point $2 or $3 billion total. They can spend enough money to influence the elections. Then, once they control the political system, they can then aggrandize their own monetary situation so that they can make more money. And so what you have is you have a positive feedback loop. Now, one of the very first ICs that were the very first electronic miniaturization were operational amplifiers. And one of the big problems that they had was they kept blowing up. And it was because it was a positive feedback loop. You'd put a signal in, and it would start to grow, and it would just continue to grow. So the way that they fixed these problems, and we probably have 50 operational amplifiers in this room right now, at least, maybe more. What they did is they put a negative feedback loop into it, which then kept it from running away, racing off into infinity. What we have right now is we have a positive feedback loop that's being demonstrated by money in our political system. Now, having actual physical addresses is a first step. And then I personally believe that you shouldn't have LLCs being able to contribute. It should be actual people, because the people are the government. At least that's what the premise is in our country. People, not artificial structures that have been put together legally. So we have to get back to basics. And it's not going to be easy. And it's going to be tough. And we're going to have to talk hard language to people and have them understand what's going on. We just have to, hate to put it in such basic words, but we have to love one another a little more, and we have to think a little more, and we have to be a little bit more hard in our thinking. And so I would encourage the city council to not only demand that we have physical addresses, but get LLCs out of the business.
Thank you. Do we have any Counselor Martin?
Thank you, Mayor Peck. Dwayne, thank you, first of all, for your service over the years and your civic engagement. But I'm really puzzled. You've given us a really good rhetorical description of how money works in national politics. But under Longmont's existing election rules, campaign donation, I would like you to explain step by step how it would be that one individual could make more than one contribution to a specific candidate in excess of $260.
Well, let's say I have an LLC, which I do have. I have a couple of them. And I could actually have an LLC that sits on the board of another LLC. I can contribute as myself, and I can contribute from my LLCs.
Yes, very good. Now, how does disallowing post office boxes make that any safer?
Well, the idea is this, and if you heard what I had to say,
I heard it.
I said it's a good start.
But that's not what I'm asking, because it isn't a start. It's
No. You were bringing up the point that how does a PO box fix it?
Yes,
It doesn't necessarily fix the entire problem, but it's moving in the right direction.
What does it fix?
It fixes a thing that you can say without having, as an example, I'm sure that you can go to a business and you can say, I want a PO box. You can get the PO box.
But you have the name of the business.
The LLC.
Yeah.
The LLC can have another LLC on its board, and so you might not even know who's actually bringing the money in.
Yes, but there has to be an LLC for each contribution. What does that have to do with PO boxes?
Well,
I'll tell you, I got at least 5 contributions from LLC, and at least 2 other council members also did in the last full election, but all of them gave street addresses, at least all of mine did. So what does the PO box have to do with
Well,
it?
just a second now, if they just gave you a PO box and they didn't give you the street address, why did you get the street address? Doesn't that street address give you more information?
That's what I'm saying, Dwayne, is that none of the LLCs who made contributions to me used a PO box.
Bravo.
Well, so I'm asking you.
So why not just say you can't have PO
What?
boxes?
I will tell you why. Would you like my personal story? And let's understand. Joan, no.
Yeah.
No.
Okay,
listen to me.
I think maybe we need to take this conversation offline.
I have a personal story to tell. My daughter is leaving an abusive marriage. She was trapped with a man who became her abuser during the pandemic and couldn't move away. She is a very well-educated person, and she makes $165,000 a year. But because she has a restraining order, her physical address is not in the voter registration database that is a matter of public record. And therefore, without putting her address in the public record, you have deprived her of being able to contribute to her own mother's campaign for re-election. Do you think that that is just?
I think that's a rather...
Does a corner case have anything to do with whether it's just or not?
Say that again?
I think you were getting ready to say it was a corner case. It was a rare thing. But the rarity of the case, and by the way, domestic abuse is not rare. If that's what you're going to say, it doesn't make any difference about the justice of the matter.
But if she gives her identity That's the important thing.
Exactly.
But the point is that you also can have LLCs that are contributing, and those LLCs can hide who is actually making the contributions.
But they can do that whether or not they have a post office box in their address.
That's what I said before. As I
No.
said, I think it's a good start.
But it doesn't make
It's a
any
good s-
difference
well,
one
then
way
why
or
don't,
the
why
other.
don't, why don't we just say
you
that
both
if
have
you have
made
an
great-
LLC, you can't contribute.
You've
You
both
have to
made
contribute.
great comments.
Yeah,
We
and I agree.
need to take this, we do
Offline.
not need to take this to 11 o'clock. So you both made great
Thank you very much.
points.
I
and
heard you. I heard you. Okay.
Thank you, Dwayne.
Yeah. Thank you. Oh, and by the way, thank all of you for spending all the time that you spend doing what you're doing here at City Council. I personally applaud and appreciate it.
Thank you. Stan Toll. Oh, no, I've already got Audrey.
Hi.
I don't see him. Oh, okay.
My name is Audrey Lovato. I reside at 930 Button Rock Drive. I'm here on behalf of the Rock Pile on the Rockies. I co-own District 303 Art of Hair, which is located here in Longmont, Colorado, and we were one of the first donors to the rock pile, to the weight pile, sorry. So when we were brought the idea, we thought it was an amazing idea. A lot of us in there work out, and so we thought, hey, this is like a new way to gym, you know? And so we found that it was new and creative for the city. You know, downtown is known as the creative district, so this supports and adds to Longmont's creativity. We are also known for our outdoor activities and living, and so this is just another way, another way to work out. It'd be great to get the youth curious with it and involved, support positive activity outdoors. And we all know our youth could use more outdoors activities. There's always someone on staff to overlook the workouts and help and support where is needed. It's great to encourage those who are intimidated to go to the gym, who are beginners, and for those who are advanced. So it could be great overall for the community.
Thank you
Yes,
very much
thank
for
you.
that. Do we have anybody who would like to speak to Audrey about it? We're all good, Audrey. Thank you. Stan Toll.
Stan Toll. I'm about 2001 Terry Street here in Longmont. I tried to put together something here, but it's all kind of confusing. And basically, what I'm concerned about is the housing situation and what's not being done for it, particularly the people that are have wound up in the homeless situation, and then there's people who have been who found housing, and then the city has basically gone to war with them and removed these people from our community, even though they're a lot of times they're long-term residents. I guess partially what I'm complaining about is the criminalization that the city has undergone towards the people who are finding themselves without housing. And one of the things I put down as a note is that we've had some recent court rulings, particularly in Boulder and around Fort Collins, that the city really needs to be in compliance with. Otherwise, the city is actually engaging in what the courts have deemed criminal behavior. People that are seeking shelter in vehicles, people that are seeking shelter in tents, and people seeking shelter in just finding a place where they can cover themselves and sleep. The courts have ruled that if you don't have somewhere for these people to go legally. You can't make them illegal. And there's other things the city has gotten creative and declaring that if people don't have a set address, that they are no longer residents of the community, even though they may be here 20, 30 years. That is also something that seems to violate parts of our Constitution. What is a lot of it is restrictions. And a lot of it is that people that, let's say, have housing and or have a situation where they don't want changes, I've been putting pressure on the city. And this has happened all across the country. It's a crisis in our democracy in that the people, one group of people have access to the democracy, and let's say the person that doesn't have housing or not even in the community yet, they're not getting any sort of vote. And so there's so much restrictions. It's like I would like to buy a small piece of property and put a tiny house on it. That's almost impossible to do. You know, you can, if I own a house, I could put a little auxiliary place on it now, and maybe, but only if I have special restrictions. So we, you know, when I was doing, working for a candidate, going door to door, I met a long time resident. And she told me the story of how her family came to Longmont. They were very poor, and they actually went where the railroad had piled the dirt on, and they actually dug into that, and their family moved into a dugout. And she explained to me how they would often get food by trapping raccoons and opossums and other stuff like that. So this community's had very poor people become good citizens of this community. And there are a lot of drug problems that people have, but if they don't have low-cost housing or places where they can get some sort of security. You know, I had a person that I worked for that passed away because of this.
Thank you, Stan. You made some great comments, and we're well aware of them. Councilor Martin. Stan? Yes. Just 1 minute. Councilor Martin would like to comment.
Yes, and I am for a lot of things, including more affordable housing and for considering people who don't have permanent address, still residents of Longmont, that you know, from the time I spent as an election judge, I learned that those people are considered residents of the municipality that they identify with. And so, you know, they're allowed to register to vote. And so what I didn't understand about the points you were making was that in what way are those people with no address now considered not residents of Longmont?
Oh, they're being denied certain services at different places in the community.
Such as?
The Our Center. And Our Center says that they're being put under pressure from the city.
Oh, really?
Yes.
No, I have to say that is not true. The Our Center, you have to realize these are all nonprofits, that the city does not own them, that we're not on their boards, we don't give direction. There are nonprofit businesses that are completely separate from the city. We will donate to them and support their efforts, but they get to make their own rules. So we don't get involved with their rulemaking.
I think I had the floor.
You did? and I joined you.
Do you know, Mr. Toll, whether the reason that our center is not accepting people with no addresses is because they are only serving people that are enrolled in homeless services, enrolled with homeless services of Boulder County?
Well, what happens if you sign up for that, you're declared a non-resident of Longmont. You're declared a resident of the Boulder County shelter.
No.
You know, and then you're asked to leave the community.
So, I mean, I'm going to interrupt here. We do have a
it'd
staff
be
that
great to
works
be
on
Mayor.
this. Yeah, it is great. We do have staff that actually works on this, and I think that you should talk one-on-one with them. And I do have your address here. So we can set you up with someone who can explain all of this, because I think you have a lot of things incorrect.
Yeah, I can give you a mailing address. It's 1067 Hover, Suite E, number 2036. And that's in Longmont, 80501.
And Suite E?
Suite E, 2036.
Thank you. You know what? I'll email you, and we can set up some time with someone.
Okay, that's.
Yeah, I mean, I will.
The email is Stanley R. Toll, Stanley R. Tolle, no spaces, because I didn't know about dots when I got that email.
At what?
Yahoo.com.
All right. I will email you and set you up with someone who can explain all this.
Okay. Well, thank you very much.
And thank you, Mr. Toll. I think you have a point.
Okay, moving right along. Warren Wang and Marley Lurch and Anna Soto.
Okay, hi.
Hi.
Everybody. Warren Wong, 1910 Rannoch. So I'm here to ask for City Council support for the new free community outdoor gym. So as Penny has spoken before about what his vision and what this place is about, I just like to reiterate that this is one of those places that sociologists has described as one of those much needed third places in this town, whereas the first place is the home, the second is the work, and the third is a gathering place in the community where people could go hang out. So like, you know, instead of seeing a friend at a coffee shop or at the library, you meet up at the weight pile and push out a few reps and get caught up. So, but I also like to frame the free outdoor community gym as a social equity issue. Not everyone can afford a gym membership, and fitness is the last thing on your mind when you're struggling to survive. However, if you have free access to fitness equipment nearby, this will remove one more barrier to wellness and hopefully inspire people to get more healthy. And on a personal note, I've visited and used this place several times last week, and it's such a unique concept. I mean, people have different stress management methods, but for me, going to the weight pile has been a great constructive distraction. And as Penny mentioned before about the inclusive gym culture, it's been great meeting people from the community from all sorts of different backgrounds. And I believe having a free community outdoor gym like this would be a great amenity for everyone in the city. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Seeing no comments, I will call on Marley.
Marlies, right.
Marlies, thank you.
Yes, good evening, thank you. Yes, I'm Marlies Lurch, and I live on 2105 Brooks Way here in Longmont. I'm here to speak also about the coming smart meter rollout on behalf of Longmont for safe technology. And I'm actually going to read the first part of a letter to this, which was also sent to this city last year by esteemed Swedish EMF scientist Olle Johansson, formerly of the Karolinska Institute, asking for a smart meter moratorium for Longmont, was in August 22. Letter of concern. Dear esteemed Mayor and dear City Council of Longmont, My name is Olle Johansson, and I'm a neuroscientist, retired from the world-famous Karolinska Institute and the equally famous Royal Institute of Technology, Stockholm, Sweden. Oh boy, so both with their close associations to the Nobel Prizes in physiology or medicine, chemistry and physics, respectively. I write to you today from my home in Stockholm, Sweden, at the request of my dear friend, Miss Doe Kelly. I'm hereby submitting some personal reflections because I understand that you at present have decided on the fast deployment of wireless systems, especially the wireless smart meters for electricity and water metering, without adequate corporate sharing of information with the public, and that there are concerns from residents about the cumulative harm which is mounting from today's rapidly increasing levels of radio frequency radiation. I have to hurry to get it done. For many years, I've been studying the adverse health and biological effects of wireless gadgets, such as cell phones, Wi-Fi, wireless baby alarms, smart meters, laptops, and similar. During this work, I've been contacted by many residents around the world in connection with different legal bills, appeals, and public calls, in connection with proposed base station installations, wireless systems near and in schools, smart meters in homes and workplaces from 1G to 6G, and much more. I'm aware of your impending installation of wireless smart meters in your city. I'm also aware that as a city, you're very much concerned about this steep decline in pollinators in our world, are taking active steps towards deciding and implementing strategy for your city to help the pollinators. For this, I applaud you. As a research scientist who's actively pursuing answers as to why our pollinators are disappearing at such an alarming rate, more than 75% gone in Germany already 5 years ago, especially the honeybees, down by more than 90% in Canada, and bumblebees down by more than 90% in the USA. I cannot yet definitively state that there's a causal relationship between the disappearance of bees and the introduction of wireless smart meters, only that the former, in different scientific studies, do not appreciate the radiation used for wireless telecommunication. However, as a scientist who is highly interested in the continuation of not only pollinators, but also of Homo sapiens, us humans, instead of adding more wireless infrastructure in the form of smart meters and a mesh network that may have unknown consequences as to how much they in actuality contribute to pollinator declines, I urgently advise you to consider instead staying with wired analog metering solutions that have served you well, I'm told, for many decades. In Europe, we call this precautionary principle. It is based on common sense. I counsel you in the most urgent of tones to halt your planned implementation of these meters. Your thoughts around becoming energy independent are admirable, but mine and others' research show the possibility of unintended consequences that these meters bring, and the possibility that they contribute to species extinction is very real. When we lose our bees, it is then when we know that we are in real trouble. No bees, no food, no children, catastrophe. That's from Joe Kelly. And here I just want to finish with, to also say again that as a resident of Longmont, who's concerned about the coming smart meter and increasing microwave radiation, I'd like to have it on record that I'm not anti-technology, but I'm in favor of safe technology. Would support a resolution by the city to halt the smart meter rollout until and unless there are clear, independent expert reports that show that this technology is safe for humans, wildlife, pollinators, and the environment, and do not cause fires. Oh, I made it.
Good for you.
I did it.
Good for you. Thank you very
I've
much.
been hurt a lot. I'm very sensitive, so I know about it for decades.
Oh, thank you.
Even now.
Good evening, dear members of the City Council of Longmont. Thank you for listening to me. My name is Anna Harrison. I live in 1612 23rd Avenue. I will now read for you the conclusion of Professor Ole Johansen's August 22 letter. There is a growing concern that microwave exposure used for wireless telecommunication will be harmful to life and on the planet, and that it will destroy the environment through unsustainable energy consumption, radiation emissions, harmful mining, and pollution, which all will endanger biodiversity and natural habitats. It will threaten our privacy, which in turn will increase the risk of cybercrime, data leak, theft, resale, and misuse of artificial intelligence. In short, it is becoming more and more evident that we must take action to protect life, environment, and our data via strict recommendations, effective self-protection requirements, and consecutive measures for humans and wildlife, and firm regulations of electromagnetic field, EMF, radiation sources and their exposures of the general public and of the wildlife. Wireless communication is now being implemented in our daily life in a very fast way. At the same time, it is becoming more and more obvious that exposure to electromagnetic fields may result in highly unwanted health effects. This has been demonstrated in a very large number of studies and includes cellular DNA damage, which may lead to the initiation of cancer as well as mutation that carry down even in generations. Disruption and alterations of cellular functions like increases in the intercellular simulatory pathways and calcium handling, disruption of tissue structures like the blood-brain barrier, which may allow toxins to enter to the brain, impact on the basal and immune functions, and loss of fertility. It should be noted that we are not the only species in jeopardy. Practically all animals, plants, and bacteria may be at stake. For the latter, Taheri et al. 2017 have demonstrated that the exposure to 900 MHz GSM mobile phone radiation and 2.4 GHz radio frequency radiation emitted from common Wi-Fi routers made Listeria, monocytogenes, and E. coli resistant to different antibiotics. To say this finding is scary is a classical English understatement. Because the effects are reproductively observed and links to pathology cannot be excluded, the precautionary principle should be enforced in the implementation of this new technology within the society. Therefore, policymakers immediately should strictly control exposure by defining biologically based maximal exposure guidelines, also taking into account long-term, non-thermal effects and including especially vulnerable groups such as the elderly, the ill, the genetically and or immunologically challenged, children and fetuses, persons with a functional impairment, electrohypersensitivity, which in Sweden, by the way, is a fully recognized functional impairment and therefore receives an annual government disability subsidy. So, in essence, science is providing even more convincing evidence that the radiation emitted by our wireless telecommunication systems can affect biological systems, including humans, pets, livestock, and wildlife. These biological effects are acting even at very low exposure levels. I suggest that you now listen very carefully to scientific reason and fact-based common sense rather than only to commercial interests. The latter have many times led mankind badly astray, and it can do it again. With my very best regards, yours sincerely, Ole Johansen, professor retired, but still active from the Karolinska Institute and the Royal Institute of Technology, both in Stockholm, Sweden.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. So our last but not least person is Jeff Jones. Is Jeff Jones here? There he is. Jeff, you put down as your address Lafayette. That is correct. Would you give your home address to our city clerk as you leave?
Absolutely.
She's at the end. Thank you.
Yes. Is this on?
No. Thank you.
Okay. Yes, my name is Jeff Jones. I live in Lafayette. I am here because I have seen Longmont as a leader for decades, quite frankly. I volunteered in Longmont with restorative justice back in the days of Beverly Title, who's no longer alive. I don't know if anybody knows that name. But so I saw Longmont as leading and doing things creatively that wasn't happening in Boulder, and it happened here first before it happened in Boulder. The other thing that I had quite a bit of respect for with Longmont is, and I'm a therapist and addictions counselor. Chief of Police Mike Butler did some incredibly creative things here, and he was second only to Gloucester, Massachusetts, in some of the things that he did. So I have tremendous respect for Longmont, and with the smart meter kind of rollout, that respect has changed, and I was very curious as to what was going on there, and I have tried to learn about this myself. I do know that there's polarized information. You've heard a lot of that. I don't really want to get into that. But I do want to say, so about myself a little bit more. About 3 decades ago, I was a dental technician and created a 98.5% 4/9 gold, 1.5% titanium flake for environmental illness clients. So I really got to see that there are people in the world who their bodies don't take the same amount of load as other people's bodies. For instance, the normal dental alloy. So what I just mentioned there was something that people could tolerate when they couldn't tolerate like 0.5% of iridium or copper or something like that would send them to the hospital. So with this, this 5G and all of the electrification and stuff like that, I know that there is a load on the body, and the way I see it, like decades ago, we used to think that secondhand cigarette smoke was no big deal. And, but with electrification and 5G, that's not something we can't even see it, but it does have an impact. That is my opinion. There's plenty of research. I don't need to get into the research, but my curiosity, and it really seems like, this is just going to be pushed through. I know this isn't just a Longmont thing. There's many states who kind of are doing a similar thing. And my question to all of you is, what's going to happen to these people who they can't handle the radio frequency, the EMFs that are happening right now? And then there's going to be more. So my question is, what are they going to do? Who's responsible? And, I don't know if there's an answer, but I do support kind of slowing this process down. And, if anyone has answers, I'm happy to listen, because I really don't know. So I'm advocating for those people who their body is already at a load that they're getting symptoms.
Okay, Councillor Martin.
Thank you, Mayor Peck. Just a couple of questions. The first one is, have you computed the EMF load that people are experiencing in Longmont now, and the amount that the smart meter rollout is going to add to that load? and what percentage of A is B?
Yeah, so like, I'm not a scientist. I can't answer those questions. My question was more basic about people who are already experiencing symptoms right now. And I'm just wondering who's responsible, you know? Because I know when I worked with environmental illness clients like 3 decades ago, they were marginalized, they were minimized. People didn't believe them. It's all in your head. Go home. It's all in your head, you know? And so I don't know, is this same thing gonna happen?
The next question I have.
I'm asking a question and you're asking a question back
Excuse, well,
at,
I said I had 2 questions, but
Okay.
is the same what going to happen?
So when I was a dental technician and I saw environmental illness clients get marginalized over and over again because they could not tolerate, you know, what was in a normal dental gold alloy, and they were told they were crazy. Is this same thing going to happen, that people are going to be told they're crazy? Because, you know, from what I'm hearing from the council is that there is no problem with the additional smart meter EMFs kind of having an additional load on someone's body.
I haven't heard of any scientific evidence with that, and I have read all of the studies that have been quoted this evening, and most of them contain egregious errors of science, so that's why I keep asking the same questions over and over again. But you know, the problem with some people being intolerant of different dental appliances or different substances used as dental fillings, you know, the causes of that in people's body chemistry wasn't known then, but it is known now, isn't it? There's a causal relationship.
Well, it was known then, quite frankly.
Okay, but
You
there
know?
is a logical causal relationship.
Sure, and that's a metaphor for what I see happening here.
A metaphor,
and,
yeah.
And my concern is for the people whose body is already loaded up, and any more EMFs are going to make their symptoms worse.
So your assertion is that the smart meter system is going to be the straw that breaks the camel's back?
It is a question. Like, I'm not making any claims. I'm not a scientist here.
I see.
I'm a concerned citizen, and I'm just curious, like, is there any thought about what's going to happen with these people? Who's going to be responsible for them? Are they just going to be pushed to the side like what I experienced 30 years ago with my example?
Well, would you say that the agencies that are deploying 5G wireless cellular technology would be more responsible, or the municipality that's deploying smart meters?
So
I'm talking to this group of people.
Yeah, I'm going to break in here.
And the reason that I asked that question is because all of the agencies that I'm sorry, I've forgotten your name.
Jeff.
Jeff, thank you, Jeff. Has mentioned are outside the jurisdiction of the city of Longmont. We don't have a health department, that's county jurisdiction. We don't have a certification agency, that's federal. And so I'm not sure why you're speaking to us.
I don't think, he's bringing a concern to us. Just like I respect everyone who has come up here with this concern. That's why we have this open forum, is to listen to the people about their concern, not debate with them as to whether they're right or wrong. Because as far as I know, there's absolutely nobody on this council who is a scientist or has all the correct answers. They may tell you they do, but we don't. We are investigating, and I am listening to you. I appreciate all the work that you've done and all the research that you've done and brought to us. We need to look at both sides. And I thank you for bringing that. What we decide won't be decided tonight. So thank you. Is very happy to listen to all of you about your concerns. And I think we're in a very incredible city that we have residents who are concerned and bring things to us. Not every city has that. So,
I agree.
So I think that I just thank you all for everything that you've brought to us. And that's what we're supposed to be, open to you, listening to you, taking in everything, both sides. We'll look at the moratorium and hopefully have time to discuss it, because you've put in a lot of work and your efforts deserve our attention. So thank you, everyone. So now we're at mayor and council comments. Jeff was the last person on the list. Chiquita, Councilor Yarbrough.
Real quick, I just want to say thank you as well as the mayor for all of you who stayed.
Right.
Wow, usually by this time it's like just staff is here. So I just want to say thank you for all of you who have stayed and listened, and so you kind of get to see what we hear throughout the rest of the night. And that means a lot for us, because I think most of us enjoy this time to hear what you all have to say, and it help us to, at least myself, to go back and do some research of things that we hadn't heard before. So I just want to say thank you, and please keep showing up and everything. So the last thing I just want to say is, again, I'm going to do this again until June 17th. Coach Prime, thank you for purchasing a home here in the Longmont. You are now a Longmonster. We would love to welcome you here at City Council meeting, and hope to see you on June 17th at Roosevelt Park at 1 o'clock. Thank you.
So Councilor Yarbrough, do you have his address? Coach Prime, we'll go get it.
If I had it, I would have been there by now.
Councilor Hidalgo Faring.
So I just want to thank, for those of you who are here and who spoke, and those who have already left. Thank you. I have pages and pages of notes from you all. And, I do want, the comments that I hear and the responses, the emails, I'm getting better at responding to them. I work full time, and it's a challenge. But know that I read every single one of those, and I forward them to the people who can best answer them. I forward them to to people to give me my answers as well. But also, all your input really informs how, the types of decisions I make, and how I can best service this community. And so thank you, and thank you all for hanging out. I have a lot of reading to do, so thanks.
Councilor Waters.
Thanks, Mayor Peck. Tomorrow night at 6 p.m., there's going to be a Zoom session that's going to be hosted by the Early Childhood Alliance.
Oh, great.
It'll be both in Spanish and English for anybody in this or any other community. It's accessible from wherever people might be. But it's members of the Alliance that are going to both kind of frame the problem and at least introduce, not as an advocacy, but as an education and public outreach effort, what that alliance is bringing forward as a proposal. So if anybody cares about what is or isn't happening in the name or in the interest of our youngest residents in child care and early childhood learning opportunities, and at least an option that a group is bringing forward that they've been working on for a while, I'm happy to send the Zoom.
That's what I was going to ask you. Where can they find that Zoom link?
It's
for the
so if I'm happy to tim.waters at longmontcolorado.gov is my email city account. I'm happy to send that to whoever is curious. I'll send them the link and people can log in if they want.
Thank you for that, Councilor Martin.
Thank you, Mayor Peck, and thank you, everyone, despite the fact that I've taken a different tone than some of the other council members this evening from time to time. I'm also very grateful for this participation. It is news to me that the public forum is not for debate. That's always been my understanding, that it was for give and take between the public and the council. And we can be asked questions as well as ask them. And I would really hate to see that go away in favor of something less embarrassing, something less sharp, something less controversial. I think debate is the essence of democracy, and we should continue doing it. I also really am tired of mayors, and it's not just this one, asserting that I am not a scientist because my work history and resume says otherwise. So thanks all. I really appreciate all of this give and take, and I love democracy, and I'd like everyone to remember that I'm the council member who made the motion in 2017 that there be more than one open forum every year. Thanks.
Thank you. City manager remarks? City attorney? All right, can we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
So, good night. All those in favor, yell, yay.